Chapter 593. There was a mortal village outside the divine tribulation sect. The houses were scattered, and they were all very old. There were only a few dozen families in the entire village. In the night, the small village was especially quiet and peaceful. All the villagers had entered dreamland. At this time, a youth in plain clothes walked over from the village entrance. He was only 17 or 18 years old, and his steps were very slow. At that moment, he seemed to cherish every step he took. His gaze was very clear, but there was also some loneliness. A few dogs did not seem to be asleep. However, the youth waved his hand lightly and gave off a strange aura. All the dogs let out a long yawn. In an instant, they all crawled on the ground and fell asleep. The youth smiled faintly and almost walked through the entire village. Then, the youth stopped in front of a mud house. The mud hut had completely collapsed. The courtyard was full of weeds. It was an old house that had been abandoned for an unknown period of time. The youth looked at the old house for a long time, then sighed and took out a jar of wine. He opened the mud seal, and the fragrance of wine permeated the air. The youth flipped his wrist and poured half of the wine in front of the old house. All of the wine quickly seeped into the soil. "Dad, I've returned to see you." The youth had a faint smile on his face, but his tone was somewhat sad. "However, I do not know where your soul has gone. I remember our fate in that life." With that, the young man took a step forward and landed on a small hill at the entrance of the village. The view from the short mountain was very good, and he could see the entire village from here. The youth picked up a rock and sat on it. He remembered every house, every household, and even every corner of the village. He remembered his dad, Annie Zhang, and the little girl next door, Huaer. Scenes of the past flashed through his mind. The youth had once spent an extremely beautiful time here. At that time, he had even forgotten that he was a cultivator. Why did the soulless have feelings? Why did the soulless have love? Those sincere and simple faces often appeared in his dreams at night. If he was just himself, then he might be willing to be immortal in that small village. However, the youth was not just himself. To everyone, the youth looked at the village, then smiled and raised the wine jar. More than half of the remaining wine was spilled. He raised his head and drank the rest. The wine flowed down his chin and wet his clothes. "Pa!" Then the young man threw the wine jar under the mountain rock. "Who?" He exhaled a mouthful of foul air. The entire village was still quiet. At this moment, the young man took out a bamboo flute. Holding the flute horizontally in front of him, the young man exhaled lightly. In the dead of night, the melodious sound of the flute could be heard for miles. He didn't know what song the youth was playing. However, the tune was melodious and extremely soothing. The sound of the flute lingered around the entire mountain village. However, no one woke up. There was a faint smile on the youth's face. That smile was very warm. His eyes were still bright. This small village had 4 distinct seasons. At this time, it was late autumn. Fallen leaves were scattered all over the plains. However, as soon as the flute sounded, snowflakes began to fall from the sky. The snowflakes were as white as willow catkins, but they melted as soon as they touched the ground. It was a heavy snowfall, but there were no tracks on the ground. Gradually, dawn seemed to appear in the east, and the night turned into morning. Outside the village, the color of the grass gradually rose. All the trees began to sprout. It was full of vitality and green. Other than the people in the small village who had not woken up, the entire village was full of vitality. The green grass and flowers bloomed, and a faint fragrance wafted. What a wonderful Xanadu! Whoosh, the wind came. Whoosh, the rain stopped. As the young man played the flute, wind, frost, snow, rain, and the 4 seasons reincarnated. Everything seemed to play out in an instant. It began in winter and ended in autumn. The young man closed his eyes and played the flute seriously. However, there were tears at the corners of his eyes, flowing down in streams. The young man valued friendship more than fengshi and bai lai. The flute did not stop, and the song began again. The sun and moon suddenly do not drown. Spring and autumn replace each other. The mountains and rivers hate that they do not see you. How can life and death be reasonable? That was the young man's song, and it echoed throughout the small village. That song was full of desolation. At this time, as his flute and song continued, the four seasons in the small village no longer revolved. Everything stopped at the end of autumn. The falling trees rustled, and autumn thoughts rolled. Whoosh, the wind came again. Everything in the small village actually began to gradually dissipate in the flute and song. One family, two families, one family, two families, the people in the village all disappeared in their sleep. They all turned into green smoke, and then the green smoke floated in the air, gradually turning into white dust. From the white bones to the white bones. It was white bone dust. Whoosh! In the end, it was all scattered by the wind. The entire village completely disappeared. This place had become a wilderness, completely empty and boundless white. The young man's face was full of tears. Everyone, I will personally send you on your way. May you rest in peace on the white bones. Pa! The young man flipped his hand, and the flute in his hand instantly turned into dust. As for the young man, he leaped up and returned to the divine tribulation sect. He had returned to his final fate on the white bone continent. Divine tribulation sect. Balai was still the same. He did not go anywhere else, but directly went to what used to be Yongjin Peak. Back then, during the great battle of the five wheels and white bones, Yongjin Peak had been completely bathed in blood. The current Yongjin Peak was no longer the same as it was in the past. This place no longer had the child cultivators of the divine tribulation sect cultivating. It was abandoned. However, when Bai Lai had nothing to do, he still liked to come and take a look. The young man's past was in the village. Feng Shi's past was on the five wheels. And the past that truly belonged to Bai Lai was actually at Yongjin Peak. In this place, he spent many years as an old cultivator. He laughed and scolded and was bullied. He cultivated his mortal heart and refined his mortal intent. If not for the white bones and the great battle of the five wheels, Bai Lai would have continued. On Yongjin Peak, he had carefully cleaned every cave abode. Here, he had witnessed the decline of the five wheels. Here, he had seen countless child cultivators come and go. Bai Lai's body was hunched as he walked up the mountain path. At some point, he had a wooden bucket filled with water and cleaning tools in his hands. He entered the cave abodes one by one and cleaned them. Actually, some of the cave abodes' remnant formations were still there, so there was no dust. However, Bai Lai cleaned very seriously. He did not use any Dharma spells, because this was the last time. He was using his last bit of heart, his last bit of strength. AI, Bai Lai let out a long sigh. Everything is like an illusion. Actually, why do we have to fight to the death back then? Whether it was the five wheels or the white bones, the old man is going to leave. The cave abodes have to be clean. Master, don't blame me. Bai Lai stood in the middle of Yongjin Peak and looked around at the peaks of the five wheels. Sumo was still standing outside the cave abode, watching everything. In the blink of an eye, almost 7 days had passed. Chapter 594. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye, even for mortals, let alone mighty cultivators like Sumo and Bai Lai. 7 days passed in an instant. However, 7 days could be considered short and long at the same time. That was because 7 days were enough for many things. The young man had already returned to the cave abode at the mountain gate. Bai Lai had already cleaned up the former Yongjin Peak. Only Feng Shi and Yuji were still sitting at the foot of the red peak. Feng Shi, it's going to be night soon. It's been 7 days already. Yuji leaned on Feng Shi's shoulder and sighed faintly. Yes, it's been 7 days, Feng Shi said with a smile. It's almost time. What time? Yuji turned to look at Feng Shi and said, Feng Shi, can you tell me why you can only stay with me for 7 days? Actually, Yuji bit her red lip. Actually, I want to be with you forever. Hee, forever. Feng Shi still had a smile on his face. He turned his head and kissed Yuji's red lips gently. Yuji, I'll love you forever. It was the voice of Feng Shi's divine soul that resounded in Yuji's ears. At that moment, Yuji felt her body go limp. Perhaps all the waiting was worth it for that moment. Feng Shi's kiss, Feng Shi's body, and Feng Shi's heart all belonged to her. However, that was the last consciousness she would ever have. Whoosh! Yuji felt that the sound of the wind came into her ears again. It was soft and light. Then, she fell asleep under Fengshi's kiss. Yuji. Fengshi kissed Yuji's forehead again and carried her in his arms. Then, he stepped into the cave abode at the Red Peak. He gently placed Yuji on the cloud bed. Yuji's breathing was even and sweet. Perhaps it was a kind of happiness. She fell asleep in the arms of the person she loved the most and then died. Fengshi looked at Yuji again. The tears in his eyes finally rolled down. Yuji, I'll love you forever. Then, Fengshi wiped the tears off his face and left the cave abode at the Red Peak. In the cave abode of the mountain gate, Sumo, Guanxiong, Bai Lai, and the teenager stood side by side. Sigh. As Guanxiong watched Fengshi return from the direction of the Red Peak, he shook his head with a sigh and said, "What is love? Falling in love with a woman is really a pain." Originally, he wanted to say a few more words. However, Sumo and Bai Lai looked at him at the same time, their gazes slightly different. Therefore, he consciously kept his mouth shut. At the same time, he felt a little regretful. What if Sumo told this to eldest miss? Sigh. Trouble comes from the mouth. As Guanxiong lamented, Fengshi landed in front of the cave abode. Everyone, please excuse me. Sorry for the wait. Fengshi cupped his fists. Sumo smiled helplessly. Guanxiong nodded seriously. Bai Lai didn't say anything. The teenager and Fengshi both took a step toward Bai Lai, and the three of them merged into one again. Let's get ready, Bai Lai said to Sumo. Okay, Sumo nodded. Then, she raised her foot, and a cloud appeared under her feet. Sumo, Bai Lai, and Guanxiong rode on a cloud, directly flying into the void tens of thousands of zhang above. Looking down at the white bone continent, it was still a curled-up human figure. However, when it tried to rise, it was nailed to the pure land by many nails. Those nails were not real nails. Instead, they were Buddhist lotuses. 3,000 Buddha lotuses to suppress the white bone continent. Hee hee. Looking at the white lotuses that only the real almighties could see, Bai Lai shook his head with a wry smile. Lotus spell. Mute. You've really put in a lot of effort. Lotus spell? Sumo raised her eyebrows when she heard that. Lotus spell? Lotus Knight spell? Sumo looked at Bai Lai and asked, Is the mute master a Lotus Knight? Who said only Lotus Knights can use Lotus spells? Bai Lai said disdainfully. Is the mute master not a Lotus Knight? Sumo asked again. I didn't say that. I don't know much about him, Bai Lai said. He didn't give Sumo a clear answer. Maybe he didn't know either. Sumo shook her head and didn't ask any more questions. Bai Lai, don't worry. I'll put the entire white bone continent into a deep sleep. No creature will feel pain. Sumo smiled faintly. Then, Sumo stood in the sky and made a seal with her hands. Instantly, the power of the Sea Destroyer realm rolled out like waves. For White Bone, it was an irresistible power. Guanxiong, who stood next to Sumo, couldn't help but change his expression. He had personally felt Sumo's power. Was this guy really as powerful as the young mistress? But how long had he been cultivating? Guanxiong was shocked and helpless. People couldn't be compared with each other. Beside him, Bai Lai lightly nodded his head. No wonder she was the strongest reincarnator in the Three Realms galaxy. Sumo had shown extraordinary talent and power. Whoosh! Following Sumo's spell, a strange wind blew over the entire White Bone continent. The wind started at the foot of the White Bone continent and went all the way north, sweeping across the entire continent. The wind rolled and the clouds moved, covering the sky. At that moment, it was as if someone was pulling a white sheet from White Bone's feet to its head. The entire White Bone continent was silent. All the living beings fell asleep. Not a sound could be heard. Bai Lai, what do you think is the meaning behind the existence of skeletons? Sumo asked. Meaning? Bai Lai smiled faintly. Meaning lies in the process. Even if they were dead, but they lived in this world, happy, sad, happy, and distressed. That is the meaning. Hee hee. Sumo nodded. Then are they puppets? Because we can control their fate. If I want them to live, they will live. If I want them to die, they will die. We can control their life and death, but Bai Lai paused. We can't control their choices. Once upon a time, the skeletal creatures all had the right to choose when they were conscious. You should know that choosing death is also a choice. If they know where they belong, then will it be the same as before? Sumo asked again. Of course. Bai Lai laughed. Don't people know that they will die in the future? Who doesn't work hard to live? When Sumo heard this, he fell into deep thought. I understand. Finally, Sumo smiled. Bai Lai, I've been very confused ever since I came out of Silent Death Valley. Is it worth pursuing something so far out of reach? But I understand. I will fight for the universe. I don't ask for the result, only the process. Bai Lai nodded with a smile. Whoosh, whoosh, Sumo's ocean destruction power enveloped the entire bone continent. Fatty, take your 7 chess pieces. I'm going to take the bone continent, Sumo said to Guan Xiong. All right. Guan Xiong answered and waved a hand. Boom, boom. On the white bone continent, rumbling sounds echoed. At that moment, the entire bone north region shook. The mountains shook and the earth cracked. The 7 black and white peaks of the divine tribulation sect suddenly rose from the ground. Whoosh, whoosh. In the air, they turned into black and white chess pieces and flew back to Guan Xiong's hand. Roar, roar. At the same time, the bone continent suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar. The bone continent was awakening. The Buddha lotus on its body shone brightly. The corners of Sumo's mouth curled up as he held the white bone heart in his hand. 8. Chapter 595. The secular fan floated in the air. The heart of white bone was hanging on its handle. It was a red pendant. On the pendant, the words secular were vaguely engraved. Even now, Sumo didn't know the true origin of the secular fan, but he knew that the pendant was the heart of white bone. To recover the bones, he must have the heart of white bone. At this moment, the secular fan was emitting endless light. At this moment, it was like a red sun rising in the sky of the bone continent. The light was dazzling, unparalleled. Boom, boom. The entire bone continent was shaking. Guan Xiong retrieved his 7 chess pieces. The bone continent's head began to lift up. However, the 3,000 Buddhist lotuses were still nailed into its meridians. It couldn't get up at all. Disperse. Sumo formed a hand seal. Following Sumo's shout, the 3,000 Buddhist lotuses began to disperse one by one, from the skeletal torso to the skeletal limbs, and finally to the skeletal feet. The 3,000 Buddhist lotuses were extinguished one by one. They had completed their mission. Boom! Roar! The entire bone continent let out another earth-shattering roar. The roar was beyond the scope of the bone continent. It could be said that at this moment, its roar shook the Pure Land. Whoosh! Whoosh! The bone continent was one of the 3 outer continents of the Pure Land. Once it moved, it could be said that the balance of the Pure Land was disturbed. Inside the Heaven Trench, monstrous waves rose. The chaotic Gods continent and the ancient Shu continent, where they were close to the Heaven Trench, had a fog tsunami. The black waves were tens of thousands of feet high. Almost all the mountains and cities near the Heaven Trench were engulfed. On the chaotic Gods continent, the black fog in the Heaven Trench was already 30 miles away from Sioux City. The dragon spit stood in the air, its red hair flying. He formed a hand seal and unleashed the dragon spit slash. That was how they had managed to stop the Black Mist tsunami. The Chaos Gods continent hadn't suffered too much damage. Otherwise, Sioux City would be swallowed. The same thing happened in the ancient Shu continent. Half of the Yi mountain range was swallowed by the fog. In the end, the cultivators of Xianmeng blocked everything. Yu Wuji, Gan Tianqing, and the others all knew that Sumo must have started collecting the bones. At that moment, even Mu Qingsheng, who was at the lowest level of Nether City, couldn't help but widen her eyes. Sumo, you've got guts. That skeleton was no ordinary existence. You'll be surprised. Mu Qingqing's lips curled up in a charming smile. However, I will wait for your arrival in Nether City. Of course, the actions of the Bone Continent couldn't be hidden from Tianfu City. At this time, on top of the Tianfu City wall, Qi Wuhui was overlooking everything. Behind her stood the maid, Xiaoyu. Niao Wuhui sneered. Sumo, you've got guts. That skeleton was formed by a reincarnation-level expert. We, the corpseless sect, have our reservations and don't dare to act rashly. How dare you touch that skeleton? What right do you have to do that? Chi Wuhui really didn't expect Sumo to be able to touch that skeleton. One had to know that she had been drooling over that skeleton for a long time. That wasn't an ordinary skeleton. It could be said that in the entire corpseless sect, other than the god puppet, no other puppet could be mentioned in the same breath as that skeleton. Miss, do you want me to stop him? Xiaoyu asked. No need. Chi Wuhui pondered for a moment, then waved his hand. If we keep an eye on him, then my eldest senior brother will definitely keep an eye on him as well. Although that skeleton is indeed a godlike thing, my eldest senior brother is a man of his word. If he goes crazy, he might really come to my purple demon palace and make a ruckus. The loss outweighs the gain. Chi Wuhui's lips curled. Let Sumo take that skeleton. I want to see how he'll deal with my spirit awakening soup in the future. Yes. Xiaoyu nodded in response. Chi Wuhui's gaze, however, was fixed on Sumo and the Bone Continent. However, she took a few glances at Bai Lai, because she was curious why there was a strange old man standing beside Sumo. Who was he? Chi Wuhui knew nothing about him. At this moment, all the Buddhist lotuses on the Bone Continent had already dissipated. The entire Bone Continent was rapidly shrinking. Layers of white clouds rose from the Bone Continent. That was the bone dust formed by all the bone creatures. Come from the Bone Continent, go back to the Bone Continent. With his hands behind his back, Bai Lai squinted his eyes and let out a long sigh. Everything is gone. As the Bone Continent rapidly shrunk. As it turned out, a huge whirlpool formed where the Bone Continent was. Such a whirlpool caused the power of the entire Pure Land world to fluctuate once again. Back then, the Bone Continent came from the sky and landed in the Pure Land world, then turned into a continent. Now, it was going to change back. Therefore, the shape of the entire Pure Land world changed again. Rumble, rumble, the two continents of the chaotic god and the ancient Shu began to move. The distance between them gradually increased. However, even for ordinary cultivators on the two continents, this kind of movement was not very noticeable. They were like two giant ships sailing on the ocean. The cultivators on the ships couldn't feel the movement. Originally, the Pure Land world had 3 continents surrounding the bitter Samsara Sea. Now it was 2 continents surrounding it. The chaotic god and the ancient Shu became 2 continents across the ocean. Sumo, Bai Lai, and Guanxiong witnessed all of this. This scene was nothing to Sumo and Bai Lai, but Guanxiong was dumbstruck. After all, his knowledge was limited. Amazing, amazing. Guanxiong's small eyes were filled with shock. This was the first time he saw a continent floating. Don't make a fuss. Bai Lai glanced at Guanxiong. Ignorant. Cultivate well. I'm ignorant? Guanxiong was not convinced. He curled his lips and said, no matter how ignorant I am, I didn't lose my soul in the last 7 days. Look at the 3 of you. You damn fatty. Bai Lai glared. Sumo, save me. Guanxiong saw the situation was not good. He immediately threw himself at Sumo's feet and hugged Sumo's leg. Humph. Bai Lai saw this and didn't want to lose his temper, so he glared at Guanxiong. Guanxiong didn't even look at Bai Lai. He just hugged Sumo and didn't let go. At the same time, he was secretly pleased. Old Bai, let's see what you can do to me. If you have the ability, then tie me and Sumo up. Hee hee. Sumo's attention was on the white bone continent. She didn't pay attention to their bickering. But Guanxiong hugged his leg, so he instinctively lifted his leg. Bang. Poor Guanxiong was kicked away. He didn't know where he flew to. Ha. Bai Lai couldn't help but laugh. At this time, the white bone continent had turned into a very clear human figure, and that human figure gradually stood up. His body emitted a faint red light. Sumo couldn't help but frown. Her eyes flashed with surprise. It's you? Chapter 596. His clothes were as red as blood, and his hair was as black as ink. The bone continent had completely disappeared, and a red-robed cultivator stood before Sumo. His features were distinct and well-defined. However, his entire body was filled with a bloodthirsty aura. A pair of blood-colored wings could be vaguely seen on his back. At the same time, his eyes were empty and ashen. "Scarlet!" Sumo exclaimed. No matter what, Sumo had never imagined that the Bone Continent would turn into Scarlet of the Three Realms, or rather, that the Bone Continent had been formed by Scarlet. At that moment, Sumo began to understand why the Zeo immortal tomb had appeared on the Bone Continent. But now, Scarlet was just a corpse. Back then, Scarlet had died at Sumo's hands. Scarlet's cultivation method and spirit had almost all been devoured by the Dark Lord, and his body should have perished as well. But why had Scarlet appeared here and turned into a Bone Continent? Sumo turned to look at Bai Lai. "Don't think I know everything." Bai Lai smiled bitterly. "I'm not a god. This is my first time seeing him." "God?" His choice of words made Sumo's heart skip a beat. At the very end, Scarlet had shouted, "You are all beings forsaken by the gods, and I will not save you." Based on all this, Scarlet had long since belonged to the so-called gods. The Three Realms was the pasture of the gods. However, that god did not belong to the Three Realms. That god was definitely not the white-robed Guardian King. The god that Bai Lai had spoken of was just a description, and definitely not the real one. Everything was still a little confusing. Fortunately, Sumo stopped thinking about it and pointed with one hand. The red dust pendant embedded itself between Scarlet's brows and disappeared. "Greetings, Master." Scarlet's eyes instantly turned blood red, and he knelt on one knee in front of Sumo. It felt like when Yu Shuai turned Yun Xian into Scarlet. However, his voice now sounded a little stiff and mechanical, because it was the power of the Bone Heart. Whoosh! The red dust fan automatically inserted itself into his waist. Sumo did not recall the ancient fan either. "He is already your puppet." Bai Lai sighed. "Sumo, this is a rebirth-level puppet. You have to make good use of it. Unless he is destroyed again, he will always be your fighting strength." Sumo nodded. Guan Xiong, who was still flying in the air, stared blankly, feeling that everything was so surreal. Reincarnation-level puppet? Rebirth state? This red-clothed puppet was actually in existence on the same level as his city lord. Other than the Northern Chill City Lord, Guan Xiong had never seen any other reincarnation-level beings. At this moment, Sumo patted her storage pouch. "Who?" Scarlet immediately turned into a red light and flew into Sumo's storage bag. Of course, the storage pouch could not contain Scarlet, but the Cosmos pouch was inside the storage pouch. Bai Lai smiled bitterly and nodded. Guan Xiong was even more stunned. At that moment, even Sumo felt a little shocked. The Cosmos pouch actually contained the entire continent. "Sumo, you'd better lay low for a while." "Huh?" Sumo was stunned. "What? A continent disappearing from the Pure Land world is a big matter." Bai Lai smiled helplessly. "Such an action will definitely alarm the true Almighty of a hidden world. I'm afraid that a peerless Almighty will appear soon. So, you better leave immediately and find a safe place." "Huh?" Sumo could not help but frown. "Old Bai, why didn't you say so earlier? You should have said so earlier. I was afraid that you would think that I was too sentimental to stop you from collecting the bones." Bai Lai said this to Sumo, but he glared at Guan Xiong, who had just flown back. "When you run, take this fatty with you. Otherwise, this guy will be turned into dregs in seconds. Not even dregs will be left." Hearing this, Guan Xiong's face turned pale in fright. He hurriedly grabbed the corner of Sumo's clothes. This time, this guy did not dare to hug her thigh anymore. "I'm leaving." Bai Lai finally cupped his fist at Sumo. "Little Sumo, if fate wills it, we will meet again. Where are you going?" Sumo hurriedly asked. However, Bai Lai did not answer at all. His body turned in the void and instantly disappeared. "Little Sumo, this is a dangerous place. Quickly leave." In the void, Bai Lai's last words were heard. Then, everything disappeared without a trace, without a sound. Everything around him was empty. For a moment, Sumo felt that she was lonely at the top. "Sumo, let's go. I feel that something is wrong." Guan Xiong's small eyes were filled with fear. It was an instinct. Yes. Sumo also had a feeling that danger was approaching. Whoosh! Therefore, without another word, Sumo directly picked up Guan Xiong and took a step forward. Of course, Sumo's choice was to return to the soul storage altar, because that was the safest place. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Sumo moved 3 times in a row, and the scene in front of him changed 3 times. In an instant, he had changed time and space 3 times, and his footsteps did not stop. Just as Sumo took the first step, a figure had already landed where he originally stood. It was a shadow. He was dressed in a black robe and wore a rather large bamboo hat on his head. The shadow looked down at the place where the land of bones used to be and lightly shook his head. Then, he suddenly took a step forward. The direction he took was actually the same as Sumo's. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The shadow's every step was exactly the same as Sumo's. However, when he was about to take the 4th step, he hesitated. This was because he could no longer sense Sumo's aura. Finally, he chose a direction. However, after he landed, he coldly snorted, because he knew that he had gone the wrong way. Lotus art. Why does he know lotus art? The shadow shook his head, but he was very helpless. In his opinion, that kind of art was an existence that could not be countered, and Sumo did not know any of this. At this moment, he had already safely returned to the soul storage altar. The unknown place was vast and indistinct. The few voices that had appeared before sounded again, but there was no one. Star River Guardian King's presence suddenly disappeared. Could it be that he is completely dead? A female cultivator's voice sounded. Which one of you did it? There was a long silence. It seems that none of us did it. Heartless' voice sounded strange, but his presence indeed does not exist. It disappeared very suddenly. No matter what, this is a good thing, the old voice said. Let's hope so. Heartless' tone was still somewhat hesitant, because he felt that things were not that simple. No matter what, no one can stop us from opening the door to the realm of true law. The old voice said, He. This little girl is willing to do everything in her power. Elder Lien, don't worry. The joyful maiden's voice was always charming and joyful. Amiba, this little monk is also willing to go to hell for this. Passion Monk's voice was very serious. We have an agreement first. Who can't purify their own realm according to the previous agreement? Then, the other 3 of us will devour that realm. The aged voice seemed to be implying something. When that time comes, don't say that it's unfair. Elder Lien, don't worry. I, Heartless, will do what I say. One realm will definitely be completely purified. I will send people to get rid of that person. Heartless' voice was cold and persistent. The others did not reply. The unknown place once again returned to silence. Chapter 597. The Abode of the Soul Storage Altar. Sumo took the last step and stepped into the cave. Guan Xiong had already fainted. This was because he had been passively carried by Sumo through 49 space-times. Time and space conversion was not an easy task. It required extremely powerful soul energy, and Guan Xiong's soul energy was not enough. In fact, it was very dangerous. However, the situation was urgent, and Sumo did not think too much. Bang! Sumo's lips curled. That fatty had just fainted and should be fine. Sumo simply threw Guan Xiong onto the ground, causing him to fall hard onto the ground. With Guan Xiong's physique, he almost bounced up. Ugh! Guan Xiong was woken up. However, when he opened his eyes, he felt that everything around him was very strange. At the same time, he saw a vast star map on top of the abode. The star map was mysterious and extremely beautiful. Little Su, where are we? Guan Xiong asked. This is my abode. Sumo did not say much and patted her storage pouch. Whoosh, humph, Black Feather Deity and Little White Pig both flew out. They went straight to the flower valley at the back of the mountain. Sumo followed them. Guan Xiong looked around and was extremely shocked. Little Su actually had such an imposing cave residence. Then, he followed Sumo to the flower valley at the back of the mountain. The spiritual energy was overwhelming and the fragrance of flowers filled the air. As soon as Guan Xiong arrived at the back of the cave, he was shocked. The spiritual energy in this abode was far richer than in the northern chill city. At the same time, he glanced at the flowers in the garden. Among them, any one of them could only be found by luck. However, there were still half of the things that he did not recognize at all. "Little Sue, what is this place? Why do you have such an abode?" Guan Xiong asked. In fact, Sumo wanted to tell him that she did not know either. However, on second thought, she gave up. If she answered that way, Guan Xiong would probably have more questions. Thus, Sumo shook her head. She then looked at Guan Xiong and said, "Fatty, it is better to know less about many things. For now, we will cultivate here for a period of time. Cultivate well and strive for a breakthrough in your realm. Don't ask about anything else." Another breakthrough? Guan Xiong grinned. If it wasn't for the fortuitous encounter from before, it would have been extremely difficult for him to even enter the god-burying realm. It would be a dream for him to make another breakthrough. "Little Sue, how long are we staying here?" 500 years, Sumo said calmly. 500 years? Guan Xiong's small eyes widened in surprise. Really? Of course it's real. With a wave of her hand, Sumo plucked several immortal fruits and tossed them to the little white pig and the black feathered deity. Of course, he didn't forget to leave a few for little Fatty. Guan Xiong did not stand on ceremony. He took the immortal fruit and ate it. After taking a bite, he felt a lingering fragrance in his mouth and teeth. The spiritual energy went straight into his Dan Si. This fruit was comparable to an undying immortal pill. Guan Xiong's small eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but look at the flower bed. This is an immortal treasure. Humph. However, he had only just taken a glance. The little white pig next to him was already humming at him. The little guy's expression was clear. "These fruits are all mine. Just eat too. Don't think too much." Guan Xiong, really wanted to step on the little white pig. However, he didn't dare to, because he didn't think he could defeat the dragon elephant soul eater. Why? Is 500 years a long time? Sumo was already sitting cross-legged on the ground. She smiled and said, "Cultivating here for 500 years is better than cultivating in other places for 1,000 or 2,000 years. I wouldn't bring ordinary people here. Why? Is this place not as good as the northern chill city? The spiritual energy is not a problem." Guan Xiong began to eat the second fruit. The immortal fruit is not bad. Unfortunately, this place is lacking something compared to the northern chill city. It's lacking a lady. Sumo smiled and said, "Fatty, you are a bitch. Lady Meow trapped you, and you wanted to go out of the city. Now that she let you out, do you miss her a little?" Sigh. Guan Xiong smacked his lips and thought of Meow longer. He suddenly felt that the taste of the immortal fruit was a little lacking. Indeed, 500 years. Sumo snorted. "It's okay. If you want to leave, I'll ask him to send you off. However, once you go out, you will be in the void of the White Bone Land. Don't blame me if someone waits for you." Guan Xiong felt that the first half of the sentence was not bad, but after hearing the second half, he immediately gave up on the idea. "Forget it. I think it's better for me to go out with you. Otherwise, I won't be at ease if you go alone." Sumo looked at Guan Xiong and sneered, then ignored him. Sitting cross-legged, Sumo began to cultivate. 500 years, Sumo was not joking. This time, he decided to use the last 500 years before the agreement in Underworld City to raise his cultivation again, then rush to Underworld City. Time waits for no one. Sumo felt that everything was a little urgent, and there were many things that could not be wasted any longer. Little White Pig and Black Feathered Deity Hong were used to Sumo's arrangements. Therefore, after Sumo entered a meditative state, they each did their own things. After eating the fruit, one of them began to doze off, and the other began to daydream. However, their realms would increase. Guan Xiong looked at them, really not used to it. What kind of combination was this? What kind of cultivation method was this? After a while, he was bored to death. Guan Xiong began to sneak a glance at the immortal fruit in the flower bed, then at Little White Pig and Black Feathered Deity Hong. Little White Pig had already closed his eyes and started to snore. Black Feathered Deity Hong did not even look in his direction. The big red bird stood on one leg in the distance, like a statue in deep thought. Therefore, Guan Xiong felt that his chance had come. He moved and was already next to the flower bed. Outside the flower bed, there was a simple fence, and it looked very ordinary. However, when Guanxiong reached the fence, he hesitated. After all, he was a burial deity. He knew that the more ordinary something looked, the more powerful it might be. Therefore, he did not enter the flower bed himself, but with a shake of his hand, a Dharma treasure appeared. It was a silver flying claw, a deity-grade Dharma treasure. Bang! The flying claw caught a gourd-shaped immortal fruit. Just now, Guanxiong felt that the fruit was the most delicious and had the most spiritual qi. Guanxiong was delighted. Then, with a thought, he tried to retrieve the flying claw. However, Guanxiong could not help but be stunned, because the flying claw did not move at all. The fruit on the tree could not be touched at all. Guanxiong frowned, reached out with one hand, grabbed the chain of the flying claw, and pulled it into his chest. However, his strength was like a clay ox in the sea. Just as Guanxiong was exerting his strength, the little white pig's voice came from behind him. Guanxiong cursed inwardly. However, he did not expect that the little white pig did not attack Guanxiong, but bit the chain and helped Guanxiong pull the flying claw. Guanxiong laughed. Use more strength. When we get the fruit, we'll split it in half. The little white pig also exerted all his strength. One man and one pig exerted strength at the same time. However, the fruit still did not move. Whoosh! There was a sudden gust of wind in the valley. The immortal tree swayed lightly, moving with the wind. The fruit began to sway. Guanxiong and the little white pig grabbed the chain and were directly lifted into the air. Bang! A man and a pig were flung fiercely onto the stone wall in the distance, landing solidly on the ground. The silver flying claw landed in front of them. The fruit was still on the tree, safe and sound. Hiss! Guanxiong grimaced from the fall, and the little white pig also rolled its eyes and snorted. They could not even pick up the fruit themselves. Not far away, the black feather deity looked at them as if they were idiots, because when he was alone in the cave, he did not know how many thoughts he had racked his brains and how many times he had been thrown. His feathers were red from the fall, but he did not get a single thing. Chapter 598. The white bones disappeared. Sumo went into seclusion. Everything in the Pure Land quieted down. 500 years of time was like the calm before the storm that God had bestowed upon the Pure Land. Inside the soul storage altar, Guanxiong also obediently began to cultivate. After a few days, he came to the conclusion that there was nothing he could do in the cave except cultivate. Black Feather God continued to ponder proudly. Little White Pig gave up on the idea of working with Guanxiong to steal the divine fruit. This guy was almost smashed into a pork pie. Sleeping was more suitable for him. Inside the cave, it was quiet. Dragon Saliva chose to go into seclusion on the Chaotic Gods continent. There were only two places on the Chaos Gods continent that the Chaos Gods sect had yet to reclaim. One was the Undying Nation. The other was Si Yun Villa. Dragon Saliva didn't dare to act recklessly in these two places. That was because the power behind them was unpredictable. Sumo had to come back and solve it. Yu Wuji and Gan Tianqing chose to go into seclusion as well on the ancient Shu continent. They understood that 500 years was the last time they could cultivate. Breaking through the Tianfu city would be a fierce battle. Raising one's level was the way to go. Jiuyu City was the same as before. Mu Qing Chang stayed on the 18th floor, cultivating in peace. He didn't know what level Sumo would reach in the Nether City, but he would definitely be one of the main forces in the battle. Mo Wen Qing, Bai Wangchun, and Yi Qiansheng were cultivating with all their might. The reincarnators of the three realms were doing their best to awaken their powers. They wanted to turn the Pure Land into a harbor for the Three Realms Galaxy. The Pure Land belonged to the third sector of Dongi Galaxy. There were 1,000 lesser worlds in the third sector. The Pure Land was only 1,000th of them. There were two other sectors in Dongi Galaxy. Later stage break world cultivators were able to break the barriers between small worlds. They were able to travel between small worlds at will. The distance between each lesser world was immeasurable. It wasn't just the distance between them, it was the distance of time. At this moment, in the first sector of Dongi Star region, there was a cultivator casually walking between the small worlds. He was thin and somewhat slender. He wore a gray robe and a hood. His sleeves and the corners of his robe were embroidered with auspicious clouds. The dark pattern on the gray robe was the vast starry sky. He was Bu Kong of the corpseless sect. To be more precise, it was Bu Kong's true body. He walked in his own star region and inspected many small worlds. He traversed the universe as if he was walking on flat ground. The first sector of East E of the Corpse's sect was under his jurisdiction. It could be said that Bu Kong was the god of the corpseless sect's sector. At this time, Bu Kong had just arrived at the void of a small world when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He did not land in the small world, but turned to look in another direction. Not long after, a vortex appeared in the void in the direction he was looking at. In the void, in the vortex, there seemed to be ripples, layers of waves surging. Then, a young cultivator in green clothes appeared from the vortex. The young cultivator appeared to be only 23 or 24 years old. He had shoulder-length hair, a face as fair as jade, eyebrows of 8 colors, eyes as bright as stars, and a smile on his lips. His body was slightly thin, and he looked even thinner than Bu Kong. He was holding a folding fan in his hand. His entire person looked as gentle as jade, with a bit of unrestrained aura of a noble young master. The cultivator in green clothes looked at Bu Kong, bowed, and smiled warmly. Eldest senior brother, long time no see. Hee. Bu Xing sneered. Bu Si-yun, it's better if we don't meet. Is there something important that you came here with your true body? Hee. Eldest senior brother, you must be joking. Bu Si-yun smiled again and patted the folding fan in her hand. I heard that eldest senior brother has been protecting that Xinghe sumo. Since when do I need to explain my matters to you? Bu Kong said coldly. We each guard our own star regions and mind our own business. So, don't ask too much about my matters, and don't interfere. I wouldn't dare to interfere with eldest senior brother's matters. Bu Si-yun had an expression of respect for her elder brother. However, regarding junior sister's matter, we can discuss it. Nia Wu Hue? Bu Kong said. That's right. Bu Si-yun nodded. What about her? Bu Si-yun asked. Eldest senior brother, don't you want to expand your territory? A mere star region won't be able to fulfill your ambition, Bu Si-yun said with a fake smile. I already feel that my second star region is a little small. Small? Hee. Bu Kong said. You can invade the ancient Lotus Star region if you're so capable. You have an army of 10 million puppets. What's the point of keeping them? Of course I'll go to the ancient Lotus Star region, but not now. But not now. Bu Si-yun's eyes narrowed. Isn't there another juicy piece of meat in Dongi Star area? I'll go to the ancient Lotus Star region after eating it. The third star region? Bu Kong sneered. That's right. Bu Si-yun's eyes flickered with anger. Little junior sister won't be able to defend the third star region. She's far weaker than you and I. The 3-star regions are divided by the ancestral masters. We can't attack each other, so we can only develop in other star regions, Bu Kong said calmly. Do you dare disobey the ancestral masters? Bu Si-yun's expression changed slightly, but she quickly smiled and said, Eldest senior brother, of course I wouldn't dare disobey the ancestral masters. However, the ancestral masters haven't appeared for tens of thousands of years. The current situation is different. I believe that even if the ancestral masters were here, they would agree to let us rule Dongi together. Little junior sister can only step down. She doesn't have a right to rule a star region in the first place. Bu Kong said, why doesn't she have a right? Bu Si-yun's lips curled up. Eldest senior brother, we both know a lot of things. Little junior sister is only a puppet. She doesn't have the bloodline of the ancestral masters. Do we have the bloodline of the ancestral masters? Bu Kong asked. Even though we don't have the bloodline of the ancestral masters, we are all real cultivators. We are real disciples of the corpseless sect, Bu Siyun said. We are not puppets. Nie Wu Hui, she's just a puppet of a god. Bu Kong let out a cold chuckle. The emotion in the chuckle was extremely complicated. At that moment, Bu Siyun frowned. What did he mean? Second junior brother. Bu Kong's voice had an indescribable tone. The difference between cultivators and puppets isn't what they are, but whether they can truly control themselves. Besides, Bu Kong raised his head. However, the hood still covered his face, but Bu Siyun could see a pair of sharp eyes under the hood. You, how do you know you're not a puppet? Bu Kong's voice was bone-chilling. Bu Siyun could not help but shiver. Chapter 599. How do you know you're not a puppet? This sentence was like a clap of thunder in Bu Siyun's mind. Then he stared at Bu Kong and asked, Eldest senior brother, what do you mean? What do I mean? Do you think Nie Wu Hui knows she's a puppet? Bu Kong asked instead of answering. This? Bu Siyun was slightly startled. She probably doesn't know. She's a puppet specially made by the patriarch. Her memory is completely transplanted from Lady Yi. That's it. Bu Kong nodded. In other words, as a god's puppet. In other words, as a puppet, she doesn't know she's a puppet anymore. She definitely thinks she's a cultivator. Those she made are the real puppets. Hiss! Bu Siyun took a deep breath after hearing Bu Kong's words. He had never thought about this question for many years, because he had never doubted his identity as a cultivator. Indeed, there was nothing to be suspicious about. After all, he himself was a Tibetan cultivator. However, this was how the world was. Bu Siyun's thoughts changed slightly after hearing Bu Kong's words. For a moment, Bu Siyun was stunned in the air and didn't speak. The corpseless sect is as deep as the ocean, Bu Kong said slowly. Even with the patriarch's cultivation, he wasn't the sect master. You should know how huge it is. There are countless puppets in the entire Dongi galaxy. Many of them must be able to pass off as the real thing. Bu Kong sighed. Second junior brother, it's better for us to figure out who we are in the corpseless sect. Otherwise, we'll think we're cultivators, but in the end, we'll become puppets. Bu Kong shook his head lightly and was about to leave. Eldest senior brother, Bu Siyun said again. No matter what, I still want to split the third sector with you. Don't you have any ideas? Bu Kong stopped in his tracks. If you really want to, then wait for 500 years. By then, Nie Wu Hui might have a little trouble. I'll consider what you said. Thank you, eldest senior brother. Bu Siyun showed a hint of joy. It was good that Bu Kong didn't reject her completely. However, Bu Siyun's tone sank slightly. Bu Siyun, you should know my personality. If you dare to play any tricks, you won't be able to keep your second sector even if the founder returns. Understand? Eldest senior apprentice brother, don't worry. Bu Siyun bowed. Siyun wouldn't dare to do anything to eldest senior apprentice brother. Once you and I are together, we will divide Sector 3. I will prepare to enter the ancient Lotus Starfield soon. The entire dust net is just around the corner. I hope so. Bu Kong nodded. I'll take my leave. Bu Siyun bowed again and took a few steps back. A whirlpool appeared in the void again, and Bu Siyun's figure disappeared. Bu Kong paused for a moment. His gray robe fluttered even though there was no wind, but no one knew what he was thinking. Corpseless sect. Corpseless sect. Finally, Bu Kong muttered a few words to himself before disappearing with a step. Inside Tian Fu City, 5-colored Divine Palace, Golden Hall. Feng Wuhui was still wearing the same blue dress, sitting gracefully on the black chair on the high platform in the hall. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and her expression was inexplicably cold. She seemed to be thinking about something. The hall was empty. Not a single person was in sight. Feng Wuhui's right middle finger was gently drawing circles on the back of the black chair. Her finger was white and slender, extremely alluring. However, who knew how many lives had been stained with her hands? Feng Wuhui was definitely a poisonous beauty. Flutter. At this moment, a magic array suddenly appeared in the Golden Palace. The mysterious light of the formation was colorful and dazzling. Looking again, a purple wood kite flew out of the spell formation. Feng Wuhui was shocked. Purple wood kite. That was the highest level messenger in her purple devil palace, Mu Yuan. Usually, it was only used for extremely important matters. Feng Wuhui raised her hand, and the purple wood kite landed in her palm. With a thought, the information in the purple wood kite was automatically read. Ha ha! After Qi Wuhui read the message, he could not help but sneer. Second senior brother, you're really delusional. I didn't touch you, but you dare to touch me? You're just a divine puppet. What can you do to me? If Bu Xiyun were to hear him talking to himself, she would probably be shocked beyond belief. Among them, who was the divine puppet? With that, Feng Wuhui shook her hand, and the purple wood kite flew back into the formation, then disappeared along with it. Xiaoyu, Feng Wuhui called softly. I'm here. As soon as Feng Wuhui finished speaking, the maid Xiaoyu appeared behind her. She was still dressed in the same way, and always looked submissive in front of Feng Wuhui. I need to return to the Purple Demon Palace for a while. I'll leave everything in Tianfu City to you. Once Sumo appears, inform me immediately. Or if my good sister has any news, inform me immediately too, Feng Wuhui said. Don't worry, eldest miss. Xiaoyu understands. Xiaoyu nodded in response. As long as you get that 3-inch puppet, you can do whatever it takes. Feng Wuhui instructed. If Tianfu City is destroyed, I can bring you back to the Purple Demon Palace. As long as you get that 3-inch puppet. Yes. Xiaoyu's eyes lit up. Compared to the Purple Demon Palace, Tianfu City and the Purple Demon Palace were worlds apart. If she could enter the Purple Demon Palace, it would definitely be a promotion for her. Feng Wuhui didn't say anything else. He took a step forward and disappeared from the Golden Palace. Xiaoyu also disappeared. In the void of the ancient Shu land, northern Chill City, Miao Long was in the garden of her immortal abode, watching the goldfish swimming back and forth. Her eyes were clear, but there was a hint of worry in them. She knew very quickly that the land of bones had disappeared. However, she couldn't find Guan Xiong's aura. In fact, Guan Xiong had a special talisman that she had given him. That talisman was made by her master, Han Bingyi. As long as Guan Xiong was still in the Pure Land, Miao Long would be able to find him immediately. However, not long after the land of bones disappeared, Guan Xiong disappeared. This made Miao Long a little worried. Although she knew that Guan Xiong and Sumo were together, she still missed him a little. Therefore, she had been a little upset these days. My enemy, where did you go? Miao Long crushed the flower petals in her hand and scattered them into the pond. She disappeared in an instant. Go to the void of the land of bones. Miao Long frowned and ordered. She wanted to wait for Guan Xiong at the place where he disappeared. Yes, someone in the void answered immediately. Therefore, Northern Chill City changed its direction and went straight to the place where Guan Xiong disappeared. They waited for 500 years. Miao Shu House. Chapter 600. Time flew. 200 years had passed since Sumo and Guan Xiong entered the soul storage altar. Sumo hadn't moved in the past 200 years. He had been cultivating wholeheartedly. Guan Xiong, the little white pig, and the black-winged deity often moved around. Guan Xiong's realm had completely stabilized at the early stage of the soul burial realm. Although he had been cultivating hard for the past 200 years, there was still a long way to go before he reached the mid-stage of the soul burial realm. His progress didn't seem to be as good as the black-winged deity, who was always sleeping and daydreaming, little white pig. Talent was really important. However, Guan Xiong was an optimist. He believed that many things couldn't be forced, so he could take it all calmly. It would be better if he could improve his realm, but he would be satisfied even if he couldn't. After all, the soul burial realm was a top expert even in Northern Chill City. Therefore, although Guan Xiong's life had been a bit monotonous in the past 100 years, he was still quite satisfied. Guan Xiong nodded when he looked at Sumo. Sumo was sitting cross-legged like a mountain. His whole body was surrounded by cyan spiritual energy. Sometimes Guanxiong didn't understand why the spirit chi around Sumo was so different from his, even though they were cultivating in the same place. Guanxiong didn't know that Sumo wasn't just relying on the spirit chi in the soul storage altar. More importantly, he was absorbing the origin power of the three realms that Azure Sea had left for him. The power of the three realms attached to the Nine Dragons Heaven platform was an inexhaustible power. Sea Destruction Realm. In the past 200 years, Sumo had reached the mid-stage of the Sea Destruction Realm. His cultivation speed was unparalleled. At this time, nothing could be seen from the outside, but Sumo's Dan Sea was a raging inferno. The Nine Dragons Heaven platform was constantly emitting energy. The energy swam through Sumo's limbs and then condensed in his Dan Sea. Sumo's cultivation was twice the result with half the effort. He was breaking through to the high-level Sea Destruction Realm. Sumo's Dan Sea could be said to be boundless. The azure figure on the Nine Dragons Heaven platform had completely solidified. It was the other Sumo. He sat cross-legged and breathed in and out. His breathing was extremely long. In between breaths, it was as if there was a gust of wind blowing through the sea of pills. Huge waves rose and fell. The tides rose and fell. Dual internal and external cultivation. The Sea of Annihilation was born from the annihilation of the sea. Above the Sea of Annihilation was the realm of undying. In these 500 years, Sumo had set a goal for herself, which was to break through the Sea Annihilation realm and ascend to the one-lifetime immortal realm. The immortal realm was the peak of the immortal realm. Perhaps, to ordinary cultivators, Sumo's speed of cultivation could already be considered a miracle, and it was utterly impossible to catch up to her. However, to Sumo himself, his speed was not considered fast. In fact, he even felt that it was a little slow, because he only needed 3,000 years to reach the venerable realm, which was the peak of the rebirth state. If he couldn't do it, then the immortal, bathing, ancient lotus wouldn't bloom. Yi Wuhui could not reforge his physical body anymore. Moreover, there were other things waiting for Sumo. Realm decided everything. Therefore, these 500 years were the time when Sumo cultivated the most crazily. Sumo strived to increase his realm before the great battle between Tian Fu and Nether City. Time passed quickly, and another 100 years passed. Guanxiong's 100 years passed in a muddle. On this day, Sumo opened his eyes. At this time, his realm was already at the peak of the mid-stage Sea Annihilation realm. He was only a step away from entering the high-level Sea Annihilation realm. However, he had been stuck at this realm for a whole 7 years. For ordinary cultivators, this was not a problem at all. However, Sumo didn't want to wait. Therefore, Sumo chose to rest for a while. At the same time, he wanted to refine an elixir. With the power of the elixir, he could definitely break through. Little Su, you're awake? As soon as Sumo opened his eyes, he heard Guanxiong's voice. Umph. The little white pig was also extremely excited. Guanxiong couldn't tell what realm Sumo was at. The little white pig had never cared about his master's realm. However, when Sumo woke up, he would have fruits to eat. That was the main point. Sumo nodded. He knew where their enthusiasm came from, so he waved his hand. Many immortal fruits were picked from the flower bed. The little white pig hummed and began to eat. Black Feather Deity Hong also lowered his head to eat. However, he was much more elegant than the little white pig. Guanxiong also picked up an immortal fruit, but he still asked Sumo first, "How is it? What realm are you at?" "Peak mid-stage, Sea Annihilation realm," Sumo said with a sigh. "Peak mid-stage, Sea Annihilation realm?" Guanxiong grinned, then took a big bite of the fruit. It should be known that he hadn't even reached the mid-stage soul-burying realm in the past 300 years. Sumo was actually at the peak mid-stage Sea Annihilation realm. Moreover, from her tone, Sumo didn't seem satisfied. In fact, she seemed a little disappointed. Alas, Guanxiong smacked his lips, then let out a long sigh. "Little Su, your realm has already surpassed Miss Su. Look at your realm. I really can't catch up with you. In the entire northern Chill City, no one can compare to you except the City Lord." When Guanxiong mentioned the City Lord, Sumo couldn't help but ask, how long has it been since the City Lord came back to Northern Chill City? I don't know. Guan Xiong shook his head. Actually, I've only seen the City Lord 3 times. But that was many years ago. Miss Su has always been in charge of the affairs of Northern Chill City. In the past 2,000 years, I've never seen the City Lord. Maybe she came back, but I only saw Miss Su. But Miss Su never mentioned it. She only said that the City Lord has been looking for someone. Looking for someone? Sumo smiled wryly. Who? AMU? Who's AMU? Guan Xiong finished one fruit and started on the second one. It was the first time he had heard of AMU. Huh. Sumo shook her head and didn't explain to Guan Xiong, because that would be too far from the topic. Hanbingi. Sumo muttered to himself, then smiled faintly. She was an extraordinary woman in the 3 realms. Sumo knew that no matter who she was looking for, they must be working hard to restore the 3 realms. Guan Xiong, I'm going to make some pills. I'll make you a low-level pill. Sumo didn't ask any more questions. My pill can help you break through to the mid-stage of the soul burial realm. Really? Guan Xiong was stunned. Of course. Sumo nodded. But you can only take one. It's useless to take more. Then, Sumo walked into the garden and carefully chose a few kinds of immortal herbs. Guan Xiong and the little white pig looked at each other when they saw Sumo enter the garden. They sighed inwardly. It would be great if they could enter the garden freely. Soon, Sumo came out. He took out a dozen or so herbs from his storage bag. Then, he walked into the stone house in front of the garden and took out the soul depository cauldron. The complete soul depository cauldron landed on the stone stove. Oomph. The little white pig was very excited. Guan Xiong didn't understand. You won't get a share of the pill. Why are you so happy? He didn't know that the little white pig would soon be able to absorb the pill mist. Guan Xiong knew that Sumo was very skilled in pill refinement, but he had never seen Sumo do it. He really wanted to secretly learn a thing or two. Looking again, Sumo threw all the herbs into the soul depository cauldron. It felt like it was about to be filled to the brim. Huh? Guan Xiong's face darkened. Is this pill refinement? Is this stew? However, what shocked him even more was that Sumo didn't use fire. Instead, she laid down on the stone bed. Your pill will be ready in a while. My immortal pill will be next. Sumo yawned and pretended to sleep. Is this pill refinement? Guan Xiong felt like the world was surreal. Chapter 601. White mist filled the air, and the fragrance of herbs filled the air. Guan Xiong stood in the stone house in a daze. He knew how to refine pills and had seen the cultivators in Northern Chill City make pills, but he had never seen anyone make pills like this. Was this really alchemy? Sumo lay on the stone bed and closed his eyes to rest. The little white pig was greedily inhaling the white, misty, medicinal fragrance with an intoxicated look on its face. The soul depository cauldron was making a sizzling sound as all the herbs had already melted. Everything was happening on its own. Guan Xiong sighed inwardly. Comparing oneself to others, one would die without a complete corpse. Wasn't it too easy for Sumo to refine pills? However, could he really refine high-quality pills with this method? Guan Xiong was doubtful. Ding, ding, about half an hour had passed. To Guan Xiong, it felt like a blink of an eye. A crisp sound came from the soul depository cauldron. The pill is ready? Sumo was also a little surprised. This speed was several times faster than the soul depository cauldron. He had refined the god-burying pill for Guan Xiong. It was relatively easy to refine, but it was too fast. Sumo got up and waved her hand. A purplish-red pill flew out from the soul depository cauldron. It emitted a faint red glow, and its fragrance wafted into the nostrils. Oomph! The little white pig hummed. It was obvious that it wanted to eat it too. This is mine. Guan Xiong took a step forward and held the god-burying pill in his palm. Guan Xiong, this god-burying pill is enough for you to break through to the mid-stage god-burying realm. If you're lucky, it's not impossible for you to reach the high-level god-burying realm. Sumo said casually. Little Su, since you're so good at refining pills, I don't need to cultivate anymore, right? Just refine a bunch of pills for me. My pills are like wine, and the day I reach the rebirth realm is just around the corner. Guan Xiong laughed. No problem. Sumo nodded. If you're not afraid of dying from eating too much, my pills will fill you up. Huh? Guanxiong rolled his eyes at Sumo. He understood that pills were always a supplement to cultivation. The decisive factor was the cultivator's own cultivation. It was the same in any world. Otherwise, cultivators wouldn't be called cultivators. They would be called alchemists. You can eat the pill and go out to cultivate. Take note, the medicinal strength of the God-bearing pill is overbearing to you. So you have to slowly disperse its medicinal strength and don't use too much force. Sumo instructed. Don't worry. Guanxiong patted his chest, but I still want to see you refine the immortal pill. There's nothing to see. Alchemy is very boring for me, because it's too easy. As Sumo spoke, she once again placed the herbs into the soul depository cauldron. This time, there were more herbs, and the quantity was more sufficient. However, what made Guanxiong feel strange was that the small cauldron was actually filled to the brim. Universe within the cauldron. Guanxiong nodded. He understood that the key to Sumo's alchemy lay in this small cauldron. With such a configuration of magic treasures, who couldn't refine pills? Sizzle, sizzle. Who? In an instant, the herbs in the soul depository cauldron melted, gradually emitting a white mist. This time, the mist was even thicker and the fragrance was even stronger. The little white pig cheered excitedly. Guanxiong did not leave. He had been waiting for this cauldron of pills. Sumo did not lie down either. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the bed. He estimated that the immortal pill would take slightly longer to refine. After all, it was a top-grade immortal pill. If this pill was effective, then Sumo could use it to break through to the advanced sea destruction stage. Sizzle. 2 hours later, the sound in the soul depository cauldron changed. Guanxiong looked into the cauldron curiously. At that moment, all the herbs had disappeared. A golden ball, about the size of a pigeon's egg, was spinning continuously in the cauldron. The immortal golden pill. Guanxiong could not help but be shocked. He had heard of this type of pill before. However, it seemed to be something that only existed in legends. The immortal golden pill was a top-grade existence among the immortal pills. According to legend, every alchemist who could refine the immortal pill could only refine one immortal golden pill after refining 10,000 immortal pills. Moreover, refining one immortal golden pill required 3 years. However, refining 10,000 immortal golden pills was an almost impossible task for an alchemist. Even if one had the ability, there was no need to do so. Therefore, the golden immortal golden pill was only a legend. Is the pill done? Guanxiong asked Sumo nervously. No, Sumo said calmly. It still needs to be refined. Oh. Guanxiong nodded, then stared at the unfinished pill in the cauldron. He watched as the golden ball became smaller and smaller. The white mist gradually turned into a faint golden mist. The little white pig looked as if he had drunk some immortal water. The little fellow had spread its wings and was hovering in the air, absorbing the golden mist. It was so happy that it could fly. Guanxiong wanted to take a few big breaths of the golden mist. However, when he thought about fighting with a pig for something, he still felt a little embarrassed. Therefore, Guanxiong looked at the little white pig with disdain. A human's pride rose spontaneously. Ding, ding, while Guanxiong was feeling proud. A crisp sound came from the soul depository cauldron. Looking again, a golden pill the size of soybean was spinning in the soul depository cauldron. Finally, it stopped. The golden pill was dazzling and beautiful. Sumo reached out and held the pill in his palm. The entire stone house lit up. At that moment, the golden immortal golden pill was like a small sun. TSK tisk. Guanxiong could not help but be amazed. The little white pig hummed and drooled. If it was not its master's pill, that fellow would probably pounce on it and swallow it. It was too tempting. At that moment, even the noble black feather Shenhong could not help but look in that direction. Sumo was also pleasantly surprised. The evolved soul depository cauldron was definitely more powerful than before. The pill he refined was a peerless supreme grade pill. With this immortal pill, he would definitely be able to reach the advanced stage of the sea destruction realm, or even the peak stage. Putting away the soul depository cauldron, Sumo did not waste any time. Guanxiong, hurry up and cultivate. Shenhong, protect me. Umph. The little white pig hurriedly nodded in response. Clang, the black feather Shenhong also neighed. They knew that their master must have reached a critical moment. Otherwise, she would not have specifically instructed them. Guanxiong nodded and sat down cross-legged not far from Sumo. Both of them swallowed the pill and began their new cultivation. As soon as the divine burial pill entered his mouth, Guanxiong felt a surge of power. The power made Guanxiong's body tremble involuntarily. Sumo was right. The divine burial pill's medicinal power was overbearing. Guanxiong had to slowly release the medicinal power to absorb it. Thus, Guanxiong focused and gradually guided the qi into the sea. The divine burial pill floated above his Dan sea and gradually dissipated. As soon as Sumo's immortal pill entered the Dan sea, it was like a blazing sun spreading golden light across the entire Dan sea. The Dan sea became a world of gold. In an instant, the Sumo on the Nine Dragons deity dais opened his mouth. Inhale, that golden immortal elixir actually entered his mouth directly. Meanwhile, Sumo in the cave abode did not move at all. Chapter 602. As soon as the golden core entered his mouth, the Nine Dragons' heavenly altar shone brightly. The green silhouette, Su Imo, actually slowly opened its eyes, and for a moment, light shot out in all directions. However, his gaze was somewhat dull. Then, he closed his eyes again. In a breath's time, the green figure Sumo did not change. Inside the soul storage altar, Sumo was still sitting peacefully. However, the corner of his lips curled up slightly. The power of the golden core of immortality had exceeded his expectations. Little White Pig and Black-Winged Deity had been watching Sumo. They did not notice anything unusual about their master, so they exchanged a look. Peace returned to the soul storage altar cave abode. Another 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, a strange light suddenly shone from Guanxiong's body, but it disappeared in a flash. Ha ha ha! Instantly, Guanxiong opened his eyes and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Mid-stage divine burial realm. He opened his beady eyes and looked around proudly. In truth, he had hoped to see Little White Pig and Black-Winged Deity's surprised or envious gazes. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. His laughter did not cause any change in the soul storage altar other than the echo. Sumo was still cultivating. Little White Pig was snoring thunderously beside Sumo's feet. Black-Winged Deity was looking at Guanxiong with disdain. Did mid-stage divine burial realm need to laugh like that? Guanxiong was embarrassed. Just you wait. Guanxiong gritted his teeth and closed his eyes again. He wanted to break through to the high-level divine burial realm. After all, being ignored by a pig and looked down on by a bird was intolerable. Time flowed, and it did not stop. The days of cultivation were long and fast. In an instant, another 99 years passed. On this day, Sumo opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with an indescribable light. That kind of expression was indescribable. It was very mysterious. See Destruction Realm, Great Circle. Sumo was only a step away from achieving immortality, but he needed time to break through. However, there was not much time left in the 1,000-year promise. Sumo couldn't continue cultivating in the cave. These 500 years were definitely not wasted. As soon as Sumo woke up, the Little White Pig and the black-feathered God Hong automatically gathered around her. This time, they didn't want to eat the immortal fruits. Instead, they understood that they were about to leave the soul storage altar. Guanxiong had yet to wake up. This guy was really working hard. After he woke up the last time, he didn't open his eyes again and had been concentrating on his cultivation. You're almost at the high-level burying God realm. Sumo nodded with a smile. It seemed that it wasn't just the God-burying pill that had taken effect. In the past 200 years, Guanxiong had indeed been cultivating diligently. Sumo did not wake Guanxiong up immediately. Instead, she wanted to take a look at the immortal bathing ancient lotus. For 500 years, it had grown quite well. In the lotus field, the stalks were straight and high above the water surface, faintly showing signs of forming flower buds. Sumo looked at the spider lilies at the bottom of the black cliff. 500 years ago, a crescent moon seed had sprouted. Now, 5 seeds had broken through the ground. The earliest one was already 3 inches tall. The spider lilies. They were existences that Sumo trusted the most. He had always hoped that they would grow quickly. Therefore, when he saw the 5 flower seeds break through the ground, Sumo was extremely gratified. Liusu, Ying, Sparse Shadow, Little 4, Little 5. Sumo murmured their names. I will bring you back to this world. Together, we will fight for the 3 realms galaxy. Little White Pig and Black Feather Godhong were standing nearby. They were very obedient at this time. They understood that this was something that their master treasured greatly. After looking at the immortal bathing ancient lotus and the spider lilies, Sumo calmed himself down. Then he willed it. A figure flew out of his cosmos bag. However, this figure was not one of Sumo's puppets. It was Yi Wuhui. Back then, Sumo had put her into his cosmos bag, but she had never awakened her. This was because Yi Wuhui was simply too weak. Now that she had been asleep for 1,000 years, it should be said that her spirit had been greatly restored. 1,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. This was something that Yi Wuhui had not expected. Her memories were still stuck in Nether City. Sumo, where is this? Yi Wuhui's figure was much more solid than before, but his face was full of confusion. This is my cave abode. Sumo smiled. Your cave abode? Yi Wuhui could not help but frown. After all, Yi Wuhui was in the immortal realm. Therefore, her knowledge was not something that Guan Xiong could compare to. This cave abode was definitely not a simple one. You're a perfected sea destroyer. At this time, Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo again and could not help but be shocked. Because, in his memory, Sumo is still an undying cultivator. Miss Yi, you have been asleep for 1,000 years. Otherwise, your spirit is too weak, Sumo said. I dare not awaken you easily. 1,000 years? Yi Wuhui was stunned at first, but then he smiled again. Sumo, 1,000 years is nothing. However, I have to congratulate you. Your cultivation speed is really invincible. Yi Wuhui gave Sumo a thumbs up. 1,000 years. Many people stay at a small realm in the undying realm for more than 1,000 years. Yi Wuhui was always a sunny woman, at least in front of Sumo. Hee. Sumo smiled and did not explain anything. Miss Yi, I will wake you up now. First, you can come out and try to cultivate by yourself. Although you can't restore your body, you can still temper your spirit. This cave abode is absolutely safe. Second, I'm going to attack Tianfu City. What? Attack Tianfu City? Yi Wuhui frowned. Sumo, with your realm, I am afraid it is not possible. The puppets stationed in Tianfu City are not very high level. However, as long as my sister gives the order, the reincarnation level puppets will immediately appear. You are not their opponent. Hee. I know. Sumo nodded. However, don't worry. I am prepared. You can't. Yi Wuhui still frowned and objected. At this moment, Sumo stretched out her hand and took out the 3-inch puppet. Miss Yi, this is for you first. Sumo said. Yi Wuhui raised his eyebrows when he saw it. Sumo, you are afraid that you won't be able to come back. Really? I will definitely come back, Sumo said with certainty. However, this puppet is very important to you. Therefore, it is better to give it to you. Sumo, I will go with you to Tianfu City. Yi Wuhui stared at Sumo. No. Sumo shook her head. There will be a fierce battle in Tianfu City. With your current situation, once something happens, it will be too late for regrets. You can still bring me with you. Yi Wuhui said anxiously. Although it was a divine soul, his face still turned slightly red. Sumo smiled and shook her head. It is not safe. You are the safest here. I have already planted the immortal bathing ancient lotus. One day, I will help you rebuild your immortal body. You don't have to think about other things. But Yi Wuhui wanted to say something. Sumo, misty. However, Sumo looked at her, and he shook her head with a smile. At the same time, he emphasized those 3 words. The look in Sumo's eyes had already explained everything. She would never agree to Yi Wuhui's request. Yi Wuhui bit her lips and didn't say anything. She silently took the 3-inch puppet from Sumo's hand and held it tightly. There was an extreme sense of loss in her eyes. "Wake him up." At this moment, Sumo turned around and gave the little white pig a look, then looked at Guan Xiong with a sneer. "Umph." When the little white pig heard this, he suddenly rushed at Guan Xiong with his nose. Ouch! This time, the little white pig directly knocked Guan Xiong on his back, his face covered in dirt. Actually, that guy had already woken up. He wanted to hear what Yi Wuhui and Sumo had to say. Chapter 603. You're awake? Sumo turned to look at Guan Xiong with a half-smile. "Yeah, I just woke up. Guan Xiong crawled to his feet and scratched his head awkwardly. Then he cupped his fists at Yi Wuhui. "Greetings, Miss Yi. Nice to meet you." "You're Guan Xiong." Yi Wuhui smiled. "Back then, Sumo went to the chaotic god's mainland to find you. He always mentioned you." "Oh." Guan Xiong regained his composure and said proudly, "We've been through life and death together." Yi Wuhui nodded with a smile. "Miss Yi, you're as beautiful as a fairy. Sumo often mentions you too." Guan Xiong said. "Really?" Yi Wuhui's eyes flashed with joy. Of course. Guan Xiong still wanted to spout nonsense. He cut the crap. Sumo looked at Guan Xiong coldly. "You fell too lightly just now." "Haha, it's not light. Guan Xiong hurriedly rubbed his buttocks and then looked at Yi Wuhui apologetically, not daring to speak carelessly. Yi Wuhui also pursed her lips and smiled. "That's good." Sumo harumphed. "Fatty, pack up. We're leaving." "You're leaving just like that?" Guan Xiong looked around and seemed a little reluctant. "What? Haven't you had enough?" Sumo looked at Guan Xiong. 500 years, and you've entered the high-level burying god realm. That's not bad. The 1,000-year promise is coming soon. I want to go early." "All right." Guan Xiong sighed softly. "I have nothing to prepare. However, if you can pick some immortal fruits for me to take away, I'll be very happy." "You look like immortal fruits to me," Sumo said exasperatedly. "Umph." Little White Pig also glared at Guan Xiong. If not for him, perhaps his master would have picked some immortal fruits. Black Feather Godhong also looked at Little Fatty with disdain. "Ahem." Guan Xiong coughed twice to ease the awkwardness. "Miss Yi, we have to take our leave. Take care of yourself in the cave residence." Sumo cupped her fists at Yi Wuhui. "If everything goes well, I'll be back soon." Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo and bit his lower lip. Although she was a divine soul and had no tears, her eyes were already slightly red. She wanted to say something, but when she saw Sumo's calm and clear eyes, she couldn't open her mouth. "Sumo, take care." In the end, Yi Wuhui only said this. "Take care." Sumo smiled faintly. "Take care, Miss Yi. Don't worry, we will be back." Guan Xiong looked at Yi Wuhui and smiled. Yi Wuhui forced a smile and nodded. "It's hard to say whether you'll come back or not." Sumo pulled Guan Xiong and went straight to the front of the cave. Hei Yu Shanhong turned into a ray of light and flew directly back into the cosmos sack. Little White Pig followed Sumo proudly. Sumo directly clamped Guan Xiong on her waist. Yi Wuhui moved and followed Sumo. In the front of the cave, Sumo nodded at Yi Wuhui as a greeting. Then, he said nothing more. Little White Pig was in front, while Sumo carried Guan Xiong behind. Their bodies moved almost at the same time. Whoosh! Yi Wuhui only saw a shadow flash in front of him, and Sumo and the others had already disappeared. "Sumo, I'll wait for you to come back." Yi Wuhui stared blankly at the place where Sumo disappeared. Unfortunately, she was a divine soul. Otherwise, she would definitely fight side by side with Sumo. At this moment, Yi Wuhui noticed the star chart on the top of the cave residence, and could not help but be slightly stunned. She had seen that star chart before. Pure Land World. Northern Chill City was still in the void where the White Bone Land had disappeared. It had been almost 500 years. It had never gone anywhere else. After almost 500 years, Miao Long had almost lost her patience and confidence. Even her immortal heart was a bit unstable, because Guan Xiong had never been away from her for such a long time. During the 500 years, Miao Long had left the city many times to search for him, but to no avail. These 500 years were a kind of torture for Miao Long. At this moment, Sumo and Little White Pig stepped through time and space and arrived at the Pure Land world. They entered from where they came from and came out from. This was how Sumo entered and exited the cave residence in the Soul Altar. Whoosh! When they took the last step, they happened to arrive at the place where they had disappeared. This time, Guan Xiong was better, because he had the experience from the last time. Even though he was in a daze because of Sumo, he did not faint. When they arrived at the Pure Land world, Sumo threw him to the side. Huh! Guan Xiong immediately stood up and laughed. Pure Land, I am back. However, as soon as Guan Xiong said that, his expression changed, because when he looked up, he saw the Northern Chill City hanging in the sky. Northern Chill City? Could this be the Ancient Shoes Void? Because Northern Chill City was in the Ancient Shoes Void. However, when Guan Xiong looked down, all he saw was a vast chasm. He could not see any land. Guan Xiong was startled, but he immediately understood. He had not heard from her for 500 years. She must be going crazy. Sumo also understood. Guan Xiong, you are finished. Sumo looked at Guan Xiong with pity. Guan Xiong knew he was finished. He turned around and wanted to run. However, a shout came from the void at this moment. Fatty! It was Miao Long-er's voice. Whoosh! Miao Long-er appeared in front of Guan Xiong in a flash. Then, Miao Long-er looked at Guan Xiong. His eyes reddened, and he gritted his teeth. The guy who had made him worry day and night was fine. He had even gained weight. Get lost, Miao Long said angrily. At the same time, she raised her leg and kicked Guan Xiong away. At that moment, Miao Long was both happy and angry. She was happy that Guan Xiong was safe and sound, and that his cultivation level had increased a lot. She was angry that the fatty did not send her any message. She did not know how worried she was about him. I am innocent, young miss. Guan Xiong's cry came from the void. Although Guan Xiong had become an advanced god-burying realm cultivator, he was nothing in front of Miao Long. Of course, judging from the way he interacted with Miao Long, even if he became a reincarnation realm cultivator one day, he would still be a coward who was kicked by Miao Long. However, Miao Long was very particular about the kick. That kick did not send Guan Xiong anywhere else. Instead, it sent him back to Northern Chill City. Sumo and the Little White Pig watched everything. Sumo smiled but did not say anything. The Little White Pig's eyes were watery and sparkling. It felt that kicking Guan Xiong must have been very satisfying. It looked at its pig trotters. It wanted to try it next time. Miao Long, of the Northern Chill sect, greets the Demon King. At this moment, Miao Long-er's expression was calm, as if nothing had happened. After that, he bowed deeply to Sumo. It was a very formal greeting gift. Sumo's identity was no secret to the cultivators of the three realms. You are welcome, young Miss Miao. Sumo cupped her fists and returned the greeting. Please come to Northern Chill City. Miao Long invited. Sumo nodded. Northern Chill City was here. Of course, he had to go and have a look. Northern Chill City could be a great help in the Battle of Tianfu. Chapter 604. In a side hall of Northern Chill City, Sumo and Miao Long sat down while Guan Xiong lowered his head and stood behind Miao Long. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly. However, he kept winking at Sumo. Guan Xiong's meaning was obvious. Little Su, help me put in a few good words. Sumo understood and smiled faintly. Eldest Miss, for the past 500 years, Guan Xiong has been painstakingly cultivating with me in the same cave. However, the cave is isolated from the outside world, so we can't easily send messages. So, Miss, you are worried? Oh, Miao Long frowned slightly. Yes, Miss, I. Guan Xiong interrupted immediately. Shut up. Stand properly, Miao Long said coldly. Oh, Guan Xiong lowered his head and stood obediently, not daring to speak anymore. Actually, Sumo changed the topic and laughed inwardly. I told you that Guan Xiong could come out, but he was so focused on cultivating that he stayed here for 500 years. Hearing this, Guan Xiong couldn't help but stare at Sumo angrily. She was tricking her teammate. He, Miao Long, sneered. Guan Xiong did the right thing. Cultivation, of course, is the first priority. What is the worry of the people of Northern Chill City worth? Miss, Guan Xiong wanted to cry, but had no tears. Shut up. Go back to the Repent Temple later. Later, I will talk to you alone. Miao Long said. Repent Temple. Talk to me alone? Guan Xiong complained inwardly, knowing that the consequences would be severe. Little Su, just you wait. If I have the chance, I will definitely take revenge on you. Guan Xiong stared at Sumo angrily, but there was nothing he could do. Sumo didn't even look at Guan Xiong. She just smiled and said nothing. Demon King, what's your next step? Miao Long asked. I want to go to the Netherworld City. That year, we agreed to attack Tianfu City. Sumo said, without the control of Tianfu City, the Pure Land world can become the base of the galaxy. The base of the Star River? Miao Long frowned and smiled. Demon King, this small Pure Land is just a small place. It was boundless and boundless. The Pure Land is still too small. I know, Sumo sighed. But it's better than nothing. Let's get a foothold first, then we'll move forward later. I believe that there are many more reincarnators of the Milky Way in Ezong. However, we haven't met yet. And Miao Longer nodded, then smiled and said, the Demon King and my master's words are the same. Oh, Sumo smiled. City Lord Han, you're back? No, Miao Longer sighed. Master's true body hasn't returned to the Northern Chill City for many years. She had been searching for the reincarnators of the Milky Way in the vast hidden world. Or is she looking for AMU? Sumo frowned. Maybe. Miao Longer nodded. Actually, Master didn't say that she was looking for AMU. However, she has been looking for what she needs. What is it? Sumo was confused. I don't know. Miao Longer said, Master's heart is as deep as the sea. Even I can't understand it. Sumo nodded silently. Han Bingyi was indeed a strange woman. Big Missy, if you can contact City Lord Han, then tell her that AMU might be in the colored glass world. Sumo let out a long sigh. As far as I know, AMU is sealed by a powerful force and can't be freed. Colored glass world? Holy Father, AMU is sealed? Miao Longer was shocked. Yes. Sumo nodded. Master said that Holy Father AMU's realm is above the Venerable realm. He has even surpassed Venerable Vast Sea. Who can seal him? Although there had been no news of AMU, Miao Longer was still unwilling to believe this news. For many years, AMU had always been the strongest existence in her heart. In other words, AMU was the strongest existence in the hearts of all the cultivators in the three realms. There is always someone stronger. Sumo laughed self-deprecatingly. Once, we all thought that we were the strongest existence. Actually, there's a world beyond the world and a lotus beyond the lotus. There's a world beyond the world and a lotus beyond the lotus. Miao Longer smiled bitterly. Demon King, is your information reliable? Sumo paused and shook her head. I don't know. I feel like I'm just a speck of dust in the world. I'm not sure if it's reliable. However, it could be considered a clue. Everything is complicated like smoke and fog. I also want to know the truth. Sumo sighed softly, because she really couldn't believe everything now. Even what the White Robe King said in the Windwheel Palace, Sumo could only be used as a reference. Yes, Miao Longer nodded at last. She completely understood what Sumo said, because the more she knew, the more likely it was to overturn everything in the past. For example, AMU's pursuit of immortality in the three realms was not necessarily right now. Demon King, I've seen Li Beihan. Miao Longer changed the topic. Oh, Sumo smiled. He really came to the Northern Chill City. He brought some news about Li Shui, right? Yes, Miao Longer said. Holy Lotus will soon become the ruler of the Li dynasty. However, He also brought helplessness to Holy Lotus. Holy Lotus can't do anything about the destruction of the galaxy, but he's trying his best to protect the existence of the three realms. Li Beihan mentioned everything you did in the Nether City. The Li dynasty will try its best to contain the corpseless sect's power. They seem to have scruples about other things. The power in the Izong world won't allow them to do too much. They can't directly participate in the war. Understandable. Sumo nodded with a smile. We have to rely on our own power to restore the galaxy. Miao Longa nodded. I've already ordered the northern Chill City to move towards the bitter Samsara Sea. Thank you, young mistress. Sumo cupped her fists. Demon King, there's no need to thank me. It's our responsibility to make the galaxy shine, Miao Longer said solemnly. At that moment, Miao Longer looked even more valiant. That's right. Guan Xiong saw the opportunity and quickly made up his mind. Guan Xiong is willing to follow young mistress and fight the enemies. You're not from the three realms. Miao Longer raised her eyebrows. However, she didn't ask Guan Xiong to shut up this time. Demon King, you still have some old friends in the northern Chill City. Why don't you take a look around before we reach the bitter Samsara Sea? Guan Xiong and I will go to the Reflection Temple. When we reach the bitter Samsara Sea, I will send someone to inform you. Huh? Sumo laughed. Young mistress, please go ahead. Then, Sumo looked at Guan Xiong sympathetically. Guan Xiong continued to stare at Sumo angrily. Little fatty, let's go. Miao Longer pulled Guan Xiong. Guan Xiong, take care. Sumo laughed. I'm going to take a look around the city. Then, his body moved, and he was already out of the hall. Young mistress. Seeing that Sumo had left, Guan Xiong looked at Miao Longer with a smile. With no outsiders around, young mistress might be gentler. Sweetheart, let's go. Miao Longer moved and disappeared with Guan Xiong. The entire northern Chill City was heading towards the bitter Samsara Sea. Chapter 605. The Sea of Bitterness was boundless. It was the main body or the center of the Pure Land. From a bird's eye view, the ancient Shu continent and the chaotic God continent looked like two crescent moon-shaped islands between the Heaven Ditch and the Sea of Bitterness. The Heaven Ditch was dark, while the Sea of Bitterness was dark blue. There was Tian Fu above the Sea of Bitterness and the 9 Serenities below. The space between Tian Fu and the 9 Serenities was as peaceful as a mirror. Meanwhile, an ice city had already flown over the Sea of Bitterness. The northern Chill City, Tian Fu City, and the 9 Serenities City formed a special angle. At that moment, Sumo was reminiscing in the northern Chill City. Bai Yuesheng, Gong Yankong, and Chun Jianfeng were all old friends of Sumo. They had gone through thick and thin together during the Battle of the Undying Kingdom. Unfortunately, Sumo had been taken away by Qi Wuhui. They had all thought that Sumo had died. They were happy that Sumo had come back. However, they couldn't reach Sumo's current level, but they still drank to their heart's content in the drunken immortal restaurant. Young Master Su, young mistress invites you. Northern Chill City has arrived above the Nether City. Please come to the Reflection House. The voice of the messenger came from the void. Okay. Sumo answered, then drank the last cup and said goodbye to everyone. The Reflection House. Sumo was familiar with the route and soon arrived. Inside the Reflection House, Miao Long, and Guan Xiong were both there. However, neither of them seemed to have any problems. At first, Sumo had thought that Guan Xiong would be beaten up. However, Guan Xiong was standing behind Miao Long, as if nothing had happened. He didn't look like he had been hit at all. Little Su, young mistress didn't do anything to me. Hee. Guan Xiong even looked at Sumo with a hint of complacency and pride in his eyes. Miao Long's expression was extremely calm. There was not the slightest hint of anger on his face. Sumo found it funny that this quarrelsome couple didn't know how to solve the problem. Demon King, we're already above the bitter Samsara Sea. 9 Nether City is on the lower left, and Tian Fu City is on the upper left, Miao Longer said. All right, then I will immediately enter Nether City, Sumo said. You can directly enter the 9th Nether City? asked Miao Long. Sure. Sumo nodded. I have the 9 Nether Een token in my hand, so I can enter and leave the Nether City at will. As she spoke, Sumo held the 9 Nether token in her palm. This time, Guan Xiong and I would like to go with you. I wonder if it's possible. Miao Long said, during the war, the entire northern Chill City will listen to the Demon King's orders. Thank you. Sumo cupped her fists. Then let's go now. With that said, Sumo held the token in her hand and willed it. The Netherworld Een token instantly emitted a dazzling brilliance. A portal vortex appeared in front of Sumo and the others. Sumo was the first to enter, followed by Guan Xiong and Miao Long, following which, the portal vortex disappeared. At the same time, in the 18th level of the Nether City, a vortex appeared outside Mu Qingqing's cave dwelling. Sumo, Guan Xiong, and Miao Long appeared outside the entrance of Mu Qingqing's cave dwelling. This place was exactly the same as when Sumo first entered the 18th level of the Nether City. The entire Nether City was built in the shape of an inverted pyramid. The 18th level was the smallest. It was just like a huge house. In front of Sumo and the others was the entrance of Mu Qingqing's cave dwelling. Just as Sumo and the others appeared, a soul-stirring laughter rang out from within the cave dwelling. Sumo, you're back. Looking again, the entrance of the cave dwelling opened. A beautiful female cultivator wearing a black robe walked out. It was the Nether City Lord, Mu Qingqing. Behind her, the black and white protectors and the green-robed holy maiden followed. Mu Qingqing's beautiful eyes were filled with boundless charm. At the same time, a chilling, killing intent was emitted from her body. It was a strange kind of beauty. That kind of feeling made people unable to look away after just a single glance. Guan Xiong and Miao Long had seen Linghu Hehuan in the White Bones mainland before. However, Linghu Hehuan was more seductive and did not have Mu Qingqing's biting cold killing intent. 3 Realms Sword God. However, Miao Long still found it hard to connect Mu Qingqing with the 3 Realms Sword God. The Mu Qingqing before him was obviously a peerless beauty, unparalleled charm, but also brimming with killing intent. City Lord Mu, I'm here to fulfill the promise of 1,000 years. Sumo smiled and cupped her hands. Greetings, Senior Mu. Miao Long, and Guan Xiong bowed. Whether it was the 3 Realm Sword God or the current Nether City Lord, her identity was worthy of Miao Long, and Guan Xiong's respect. Miss Miao, Guan Xiong, there's no need to be so polite. Mu Qingqing smiled sweetly. White Bones mainland, we could be considered old acquaintances. I'm Linghu Hehuan, and Linghu Hehuan is me. Miao Long, smiled and nodded. Junior is in awe of Senior Mu's marvelous immortal arts. Mu Qingqing smiled faintly. Everyone, please come in. Thus, Sumo and the others followed Mu Qingqing into her cave dwelling. Now, there were more furnishings in the cave dwelling. Everyone sat down according to the host and guest. Sumo, your realm has really advanced by leaps and bounds. Mu Qingqing looked at Sumo and said, it's only been 1,000 years, but you actually advanced from the intermediate undying realm to the peak sea destruction realm. Moreover, as long as you have the opportunity, you can advance to the one-era immortal realm at any time. The reincarnation of the Nether Sovereign is indeed different. Sumo smiled, thanks to City Lord Mu's blessing. However, this realm is still not enough to deal with City Lord Tianfu. 1,000 years ago, Feng Wuhui was already at the peak of the one-era immortal realm. Leave Feng Wuhui to me. You can deal with the rest. Mu Qingqing smiled. How about it? You should know that Feng Wuhui isn't scary. What's scary is that she can mobilize the power of the corpseless sect. That's not a problem. Sumo smiled. Unless she can mobilize the absolute power of the corpseless sect, we still have a chance of winning. I hope so. Mu Qingqing asked, when will Palace Lord you arrive? I don't know what realm she is at now. She will definitely return before the Millennium Promise. I guess she is already a breaking realm cultivator, Sumo said. Not only her, but the Divine Dragon Pavilion Master will also come. The Divine Dragon Pavilion Master Gan Tianqing. Mu Qingshang said. Yes. Sumo nodded. He reincarnated to the ancient Shu continent and just awakened not long ago. However, 500 years ago, he was already at the middle stage of the breaking realm. First Divine Dragon of the mysterious Heaven Pavilion. Mu Qingshang said, I have heard of his name in the past. Unfortunately, I have never seen him. Actually, how many heroes are there in the Star River? If we can really meet them, the Star River will not be as brilliant as before. That's right. Sumo took a deep breath. So, although the Pure Land is small, we will really make it into the Star River Pure Land. Then, with the sparks, we will light up the entire Star River. Hee hee. Well said. At this time, the door of the cave house opened. Mo Wenqing, Bai Wangchun, and Yi Kanxing came together. The one who spoke was naturally Mo Wenqing. The moment they entered the door, there was the light of the array outside the cave house. Inside the array, there were 2 men and 1 woman, a red-haired man, a male cultivator in green, and a woman in blue. Dragon Saliva, Gan Tianqing, and Yuwuji. The Millennium Promise. All the reincarnators of the 3 realms had arrived. Chapter 606. A Gathering of Experts. Jiuyuming City's 18th underground floor was filled with cultivators. Most of them were reincarnators of the 3 realms. Although they had not recovered their former strength, they were not to be underestimated in the Pure Land. Now, all of them were breaking world cultivators. To them, cultivation was a process of awakening their strength. Their opportunities were different, so the speed at which they awakened was different. Gan Tianqing, Mo Wenqing, and Bai Wangchun were already at the peak of the breaking world. Yu Wuji was at the late stage of the breaking world. Yi Kanxing and Dragon Saliva were at the middle stage of the breaking world. It had only been 1,000 years. Their progress was incredible. However, when they learned of Sumo's realm, they were left in the dust. Guanxiong looked at the reincarnators of the 3 realms and sighed. He was the only burying god cultivator in the entire cave. He had borrowed Sumo's light. Otherwise, he would have been even worse. Compared to these reincarnators, Yizong cultivator's cultivation speed could not be compared at all. Everyone exchanged a few words with each other and talked about what happened after they parted. Especially after Yi Kanxing and Gan Tianqing met, they were filled with endless emotions. After all, only the 2 of them had broken Xian Tian Pavilion and reincarnated into the Yizong world. Everyone should be here. Sumo said, this time, everyone is gathered here to break Tianfu City's control over the Pure Land. Only by breaking Tianfu City's control over the Pure Land can the 3 realms cultivators truly control the Pure Land. This is the beginning of the 3 realms galaxy cultivators' plan to restore the galaxy. Demon King, just tell us what to do. Mu Qingshang smiled. We are all willing to listen to your orders. Jiuyuming City has already been set up. Even if there are puppets and soul washers causing trouble in the city, we can suppress them. Moreover, I have 3,000 undying realm cultivators that I can trust and mobilize. The ancient Shu continent is also prepared. Yu Wuji smiled and said, moreover, the ancient Shu continent can transfer 5,000 undying rank cultivators. The chaotic gods continent itself shouldn't be a problem. Dragon Saliva smiled bitterly and shook his head. However, we can't transfer even a single undead cultivator. It's fine, Sumo replied. Aside from the Bone continent, the chaotic gods continent was their weakest link. Moreover, the undead kingdom was the main defense of the chaotic god sect. There isn't a single puppet in the northern cold city, Miaolong said with a smile. However, we don't have many people. 500 cultivators above the undead realm would not be a problem. However, the northern chill city is powerful enough to shake the Tianfu city. Very good, Sumo smiled. Then, let's split up and make some preparations. On the day of the war, Lord Mu, don't act rashly. After all, you are the strongest among us. Moreover, Tianfu City should not know everything about you. You could be her trump card. All right. Mu Qingsheng nodded with a smile. On the day of the war, I will appear in the form of a clone. Even Ye Wuhui won't be able to see through my realm. 3 days later, we will finalize the details and attack the Tianfu City. Sumo glanced at everyone. Everyone nodded. They still had confidence in this battle. After all, they were going to deal with the Tianfu City, not the corpseless sect. Nie Wuhui was only a peak immortal realm cultivator in one life, while Mu Qingsheng had reincarnated in one life. As long as the main force of the corpseless sect was restrained, they had a good chance of winning. However, just as they were about to finish their simple discussion, everyone felt the entire cave tremble slightly. In fact, the tremble was extremely subtle. However, everyone present was a supreme expert of the Pure Land. They had all captured that slight movement. Mu Qingsheng raised her eyebrows. Mo Wenqing and Bai Wangshan couldn't help but look at each other. You guys go out and have a look, Mu Qingsheng said. Under her command, Mo Wenqing and Bai Wangshan instantly disappeared. Because such an unusual movement had never occurred in the Ninth Hell City in the past tens of millions of years. A trace of it was enough to explain a lot. It seemed movement. At this moment, the green-robed holy maiden who was standing behind Mu Qingsheng frowned. She was the holy maiden of Nether City, and her spiritual perception was superior to others. See movement? Everyone was taken aback. The Netherworld realm was located between the Wheel of Bitterness, the earthly sea, and the Netherworld City was the center of the Netherworld realm. Under normal circumstances, even the movement of the sea would not affect this place. Who? Mu Qingsheng flicked her sleeves, and a water mirror appeared in the cave. Within the water mirror, one could overlook the entire 9 underworlds. Huge waves rose in all directions, rolling up thousands of feet like a tsunami. At this time, the entire Netherworld realm and the 9 tribes of the Netherworld realm unexpectedly experienced endless waves. The 9 underworlds were currently being submerged by the sea of bitterness, samsara. The source of the tide wasn't right. Everyone felt that something was wrong. The 3 of you bring the divine ox up to take a look, Mu Qingsheng commanded. Yes. The black and white protectors and the green-robed saintess replied at the same time. The 3 of them moved, and a formation instantly appeared under their feet. The green-robed holy maiden led the 5-color divine ox. The 3 of them and the ox directly disappeared. The 5-color divine ox could suppress the sea. However, Sumo and the others didn't know this. The situation has changed. Sumo raised her brows. She had a bad premonition in her heart. At this time, Dragon Saliva and Yu Wuji received news from the continent at almost the same time. Chaotic deities, rebellion. Countless puppets rushed out of the undying kingdom. The ancient Shu was in turmoil. Many monsters came ashore in the Heaven Trench. Dragon Saliva and Yu Wuji looked at Sumo. Tianfu City has made the first move. Dragon Saliva sneered. Boom! At this time, the whole Nether City exploded. The cave trembled again. This time, the degree of shaking was obviously greater. Tianfu City is indeed not simple. Sumo sneered. It seems that there is no time like the present. At this moment, Miao Long frowned slightly. Looking again, the jade pendant on her waist suddenly emitted a strange brilliance. Some cultivators are starting to seal the 9 hells. Miao Long frowned. My connection with Northern Chill City is being cut off. What a powerful seal. Let's go. Mu Qingsheng waved her hand. Everyone understood that they couldn't wait any longer. Rumble, rumble. The roof of the cave on the 18th floor of the Nether City suddenly cracked open. Mu Qingsheng waved her hand and set up an extremely powerful formation in the center of the cave. A ray of light shot up into the sky. Su Mo and the rest all flew in, and Mu Qingsheng, who was the last to enter, had already split into 3. The white-robed male cultivator, the black-robed female cultivator, and the white-robed female cultivator. 3 Linghu, He-Huans appeared at the same time. However, the 2 female cultivators were wearing veils. They were graceful and incomparable. Through the teleportation formation, Sumo and the others were directly sent to the surface of the Nine Hells Nether City. At this time, they were surrounded by endless battle cries. There were 9 huge teleportation formations on the tall black city walls. Theoretically, this was the center of the Netherworld realm. The 9 tribes of the Netherworld were all outside the city walls of the Nether City. At this time, the teleportation formation was full of cultivators of the Netherworld. However, the teleportation formation couldn't be used anymore. Outside the city walls, there was only the bitter wheel sea. At this moment, it was as if the power of a god was drowning the Netherworld with the bitter wheel sea. Chapter 607. The 9 underworlds shook and the 4 seas raged. At that moment, the exposed parts of the 9 underworlds city roared and shook. Seawater surged from all directions, and it was frightening. Moo! In the air, the 5-color divine bull stepped on the waves and roared at the sky. Under its feet were 5-colored clouds. All the seawater automatically retreated when it reached its feet. However, the 5-color divine bull could only protect less than 100 miles outside the 9 underworld city. It couldn't take care of the 9 underworld tribes outside the city. Next to the 5-color divine bull, the Saintess in Green had already performed a spell. The Saintess in Green was a cultivator at the great completion of the world-breaking stage. However, her magic power couldn't spread more than 100 miles outside the 9 underworld city. All the power, like the 5-color divine bull's power, could only wander around the Nether City. Mu Qingqing's black and white protectors were in the same situation. Somehow, a strong power was restraining the entire Nether City. At that moment, the entire 9 underworld city seemed to be trapped in a giant water prison. In the air, seawater surged. If the Nether City's defensive formation hadn't been activated, the seawater would have already poured down. God's anger. God is angry. A cultivator inside the 9 underworld city wall shouted, God is going to drown the 9 underworlds. We're all sinners. Wow. When this was said, there was an uproar. Originally, the 9 underworld's cultivators who had escaped into the 9 underworld city wall were already panicking. As for the saying that God had created the 9 underworlds, many 9 underworld's cultivators believed it without a doubt. Just now, many of them had seen the seawater falling from the sky and swallowing the 9 underworld tribes. For a moment, the crowd was agitated and sad. Puff! In an instant, Sumo had already made his move. She reached out and grabbed a middle-aged cultivator in the crowd. Just now, he was the one who had led the shouting. Sumo's expression turned cold, and his slender fingers pierced straight into Lin Fan's skull. That was a deity's tribulation cultivator. How could he block Sumo's attack? There was a scream, and blood splattered everywhere. The cultivator's head was crushed by Sumo, and he died instantly. At the same time, the black and white protectors each killed a cultivator. One was a divine tribulation, and the other was undying. They were the first cultivators to chime in, deceiving people with lies. Kill! Sumo shouted coldly. His voice rumbled and shook the 9 underworlds. He understood that if he didn't use a thunderous method now, it would be impossible to suppress everything. These cultivators of the 9 hells were most likely not puppets. Otherwise, they would have already started a riot. As expected, after killing 3 cultivators, the entire city wall of 9 hells fell silent. Sumo's pressure spread out, and everyone felt a power that was even more terrifying than the seawater. Who? At this moment, the 9 formations lit up at the same time. However, it wasn't the people outside the city that could enter the city. Instead, it was the cultivators from the Netherworld city that could rush out. The 9 great formations were activated at the same time, and several thousand cultivators rushed out. Mo Wenqing and Bai Wangchun were in the lead. At this moment, both of them were covered in blood. Behind them were the clan leaders of the 5 great clans. All of them were covered in blood and exhausted, yet their faces were covered in tears of blood. Behind them, there were many Nether City cultivators, and almost all of them were injured. However, there weren't many cultivators that belonged to the 5 great clans. City Lord, The soul cleaners of the 5 great clans rebelled. Your subordinates have already eliminated them all. Mo Wenqing knelt on one knee in front of the black-clothed Mu Qingqing. The Mo clan did not fail the mission. We are cleansed of our sins. His voice was already trembling, because he had personally killed almost all the people from the Mo clan. Those people were his kin. The Bai clan did not fail the mission. We are cleansed of our sins. Bai Wangchun's voice was rather cold. Bai Wangchun was the reincarnation of Mo Wuan. It wasn't easy for him to show his emotions. Moreover, at this moment, he already had the intention to fight to the death. The Li clan did not fail the mission. We are cleansed of our sins. The Tang clan did not fail the mission. We are cleansed of our sins. The Linghu clan did not fail the mission. We are cleansed of our sins. The 3 clan leaders also knelt on the ground, their voices solemn and stirring. The sins were once like a mountain, pressing down on the 5 great clans until they couldn't breathe. Now, with the blood of the entire clan, they could completely cleanse everything. Mu Qingchang sighed softly, and then slowly nodded her head. We are the descendants of the 3 realms. Our blood won't flow in vain. In the Netherworld City, for tens of thousands of years, the 5 great clans had silently endured everything. Actually, the cultivators of Netherworld City that held a grudge against the 5 great clans only understood everything today. Why were only the cultivators of the 5 great clans able to reach the peak of the undying realm? It wasn't their privilege to die, but rather a path to death. After all, they had to become sacrificial victims. Only by doing so could they protect the other cultivators of Netherworld City and even the entire Netherworld realm. Actually, the cultivators of the Netherworld outside Netherworld City still didn't understand what was happening. However, this was how the world worked. In places you didn't know, there would always be a group of people that you would never know in this life protecting you. It was just like how the 5 great clans protected the Netherworld realm. The descendants of the 3 realms can't be puppets, Sumo thought to himself. At the same time, the corner of his mouth rose. In the blink of an eye, his eyes turned from red to black. The black chi on his body started to rise. The power of the sea of destruction started to spread. Today, they could only fight. There was no way out. If they couldn't break the seal, they would fail. At the same time, the power of the sea of destruction on Miao Long, Er's body, also started to spread. Miao Long, Er's body started to emit a gentle but extremely tyrannical power. The 2 cultivators of the sea of destruction started to exert their strength. Kill! At this time, the sounds of killing rose from all over the sea. It seemed as if thousands of soldiers and horses were galloping over from the waves. Sure enough, countless cultivators were coming out of the seawater surrounding Netherworld City. There was an innumerable black mass of them. Their eyes were gray, and they looked like walking corpses. They were the people of the Netherworld realm, but they were already dead. Sumo and the others had seen such a scene before. Back then, the undying country was the same. However, the Netherworld realm was far more terrifying than the undying country. Ahaha! The laughter of a cultivator echoed in the sky. How dare a small Netherworld city cause trouble? Only the tomb of gods can violate the contract of the gods. The sea of suffering reincarnation will become the sea of cleansing souls. The voice was wild and mechanical, not the voice of a normal cultivator. A puppet of the corpseless sect? Everyone understood what was going on. Kill! The voice of the cultivator was like a long whip. It drove away all the puppets in the sea of suffering reincarnation. The city wall of the Netherworld was hundreds of meters tall. However, the seawater kept rising and closing in on the city. Boom! However, under the protection of the 5-color divine cow, the saintess in green, and the black and white protectors, the puppets turned into black mist. After all, they weren't high-level cultivators when they were alive. Puppets like the soul transformation realm and the deity realm could only be used as cannon fodder. Moreover, Sumo and Miao Long, Er's powers started to counterattack. Boom! The seawater started to flow backward. The waves in front flowed backward, and the waves behind attacked. The two powerful forces collided, creating a huge curtain of water. At this time, two figures suddenly flew out of the sea of suffering reincarnation. They attacked Sumo and Niao Long, respectively. Chapter 608. Two figures, one red and the other green. They were not other puppets, but firemen and wooden puppet from the five-color divine palace. They were both deity-burying realm puppets. Now, they had reached the peak of the deity-burying realm. In fact, their realms could be considered top-notch in the whole Tianfu city. After all, Tianfu city only controlled a small pure land. However, in front of Sumo and Miao Long, they could not withstand a single blow. Whoosh boom, Sumo and Miao Long, waved their hands. The power of the sea suddenly spread, and the two puppets directly exploded. One turned into red mist, and the other into green mist. However, the thick mist did not immediately dissipate. Instead, it was immediately submerged in the sea of bitterness. Sumo and Miao Long, could not help but frown. At that moment, they both had a bad premonition. These two puppets seemed to have deliberately come to die. At the same time, as the power of the sea of Sumo and Miao Long spread, almost all the puppets of the netherworld that were rushing over disappeared. On the surface, all the puppets were dying. However, the color of the sea of bitterness was getting darker and darker. In just a moment, the water of the whole sea of bitterness had become as thick as ink. Just now, the power of Sumo and Miao Long pushed the whole sea several hundred miles away. However, the area within several hundred miles was already barren. The terrain had completely disappeared. The whole surface had become black, as if it was burnt. The dense fog rising from the burnt area looked somewhat terrifying. The 9 tribes of the netherworld were probably burnt corpses, and the way out of the netherworld realm was blocked. At this time, the whole sea had also become black. All the puppets in the sea had disappeared. However, the sea was like black fog, constantly tumbling, as if something was surging in the sea of bitterness. Sumo narrowed her eyes and looked at everything. She knew that there must be someone controlling everything in the sea of bitterness. However, she did not know if it was Gui Wuhui. After fireman and wooden puppet, no more puppets appeared. As for the two puppets, they were like two fuses. The whole sea of bitterness was undergoing some kind of change. For a time, Sumo and Miao Long felt that they didn't know where to start. The voice of the cultivator in the air did not return. Roar, roar, but suddenly an earth-shattering roar came from the ink-colored seawater. That voice wasn't the voice of a cultivator from before. It sounded like a dragon's cry, yet wasn't a dragon's cry. Like a tiger's roar, yet wasn't a tiger's roar. It was extremely unique. When he looked again, the seawater that was as thick as ink suddenly flipped over. Something that looked like a long dragon was flung out from inside. At first glance, it looked like an endless black whip. However, that long whip was even more terrifying than Yi Sanqing's Mara star-chasing whip. That was because the whip had become much longer and much thicker. That was not a long whip. Or rather, it looked more like a giant black snake. The giant black snake brought with it an endless wave of air and directly swept toward Sumo. The power of the sea annihilation. The bitter wheel black sea, which had been forced back by the joint efforts of Sumo and Miao Long, surged forward again. What was that? Sumo's heart skipped a beat. At the same time, he had already flown up. With a flick of his wrist, the broken bamboo pole was already in his hand. Sumo did not have any hesitation. He directly swung the broken bamboo pole and whipped it towards the so-called black snake. The power of the ocean destroyer was poured into the pole, and it also had a tail of light that was dozens of feet long. However, compared to the so-called black snake, the tail of the ray was still far from being able to compare. Boom! Crack! In an instant, the broken bamboo pole and the black snake collided. Spirit energy spread out like a storm. For a moment, the earth shook and the mountains shook. The outer city of the netherworld city rumbled. Boom! The section of the city wall closest to Sumo suddenly collapsed. That was actually only the power of the aftermath. Mo Wuhan, by Wang Shun, and the others who temporarily did not participate in the battle hurriedly cast spells to repair the city wall. Looking again, Sumo's body flew hundreds of feet high. The light of the broken bamboo pole did not diminish at all, but the so-called black snake was rapidly retreating. This time, it was obvious that Sumo had the upper hand. However, no one knew what the black snake was. However, the moment the black snake retreated, another similar snake appeared in another direction. This time, it attacked Miao Long. The opponent's target seemed clear. This was because besides Mu Qingcheng, who had hidden her power, Sumo and Miao Long were the strongest fighting power of the Netherworld City. If these two people fell, the people of the Netherworld City would not be a problem. However, the attack of the Ocean Destroyer class could not do anything to Sumo and Miao Long. Suppress. Seeing the black snake coming, Miao Long did not use a head-on method like Sumo. Instead, he directly formed a seal. Looking again, Miao Long's body instantly emitted a white mist. The temperature within a radius of a few hundred miles changed. That white mist was the coldest and most keen air. Miao Long's cold air could even kill a world-break cultivator. She could turn the entire bitter sea into a sea of ice. Crack, crack. The air was filled with the sound of ice freezing. Miao Long's willowy eyebrows raised. Everything within a radius of a few hundred miles became an ice cave. At that moment, even the air was frozen. The Ocean Destroyer cultivators were not supposed to exist in the Pure Lands. Ocean spell, many of the three realms reincarnators exclaimed. Han Bingyi had knelt outside the three realms' sacred mountain for 100 years to chase after Amu. In the end, she was taken as a fairy servant by Lung Yu. Although she was not a true Ocean Destroyer disciple, Lung Yu felt her obsession and taught her everything she knew. Therefore, Miao Long's spell was a pure ocean spell. 1,000 miles of ice, a path of cold smoke. The black snake that was lashing at her was instantly frozen in the air when it was only 100 feet away from Miao Long. It could not move. At that moment, everyone could see clearly that it was a black object that was a few hundred feet long and 6 to 7 feet thick. It was covered with long black hair that was 2 to 3 feet long. At the top, there were 2 big holes that emitted cold air. However, that was because Miao Long's spell had frozen it. Nose! Linghu Sheng, one of the 5 family heads of Nether City, frowned. At the same time, his expression changed. What is that? Water and fire devil smoke elephant. Tang Wan'er, the head of the Tang family, next to Linghu Sheng, said. She was the one with the highest realm among the 5 family heads. Middle stage breaking world. Water and fire devil smoke elephant, one of the 3 divine beasts of the Pure Lands. Mu Qingcheng raised her eyebrows. She had never thought that such a divine beast would appear here. Little Su released the dragon elephant soul devouring beast. Guanxiong shouted, divine beast against divine beast. Guanxiong's method was correct. At that moment, Sumo heard their conversation. Whoosh, Sumo's heart moved. Her cosmos bag was already open. Oomph, the little white pig jumped out. Moreover, the moment it rushed out, it transformed into its original form. It was no longer a cute little white pig, but a wild beast. It was hundreds of feet tall, with cloud-like wings and a hook-like tail. The entire outer city of Nether City seemed to be in its shadow. Roar! The dragon elephant soul devouring beast raised its head and roared. It could already feel the aura of the water and fire devil smoke elephant. The 3 divine beasts of the Pure Lands were like fire and water. Looking again, the dragon elephant soul devouring beast fiercely rushed towards the long nose that was temporarily frozen by Miao Long. It bared its fangs and opened its huge mouth. Crack! The dracophant soul devouring beast bit the elephant trunk into 2. Chapter 609. The 3 divine beasts of the Pure Land were the dragon elephant soul devouring beast, the fiery water devil smoke elephant, and the 5 elements divine sparrow. These three divine beasts had innate abilities, and they were existences that could summon the wind and rain. However, the three adult divine beasts were almost extinct. In essence, the little white pig wasn't a true adult. However, it had fused with the corpse of an adult dragon elephant soul devouring beast. The five elements divine sparrow that Sumo had seen in the Undying Kingdom was only a fledgling. However, all the cultivators felt it today. What they were facing should be a matured water and fire devil smoke elephant. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the ability to overturn the sky and the sea. If a divine beast and a cultivator were at the same level, the divine beast would undoubtedly be stronger. This was because the physique of a divine beast far surpassed that of a cultivator. Even though Sumo and Meow Long had the upper hand just now, that was only the two trunks of the fiery water devil smoke elephant. It hadn't revealed its true strength at all. Roar! The dragon elephant soul devouring beast bit off the trunk of the fiery water devil smoke elephant. The shocking roar of an elephant came from the sea of bitterness again. At that moment, the fiery water devil smoke elephant also sensed the aura of the dragon elephant soul devouring beast. Boom! The ice on the trunk was violently shaken off. At the same time, the trunk was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, the color of the newly grown trunk was slightly fainter. The two divine beasts were sworn enemies. Looking again, the sea of bitterness that faced the Netherworld city gradually separated into a water gate. It was hundreds of meters tall and dozens of meters wide. It was a path to the heavens. An enormous creature walked out of the water gate. In terms of size, the fiery water devil smoke elephant was even larger than the dragon elephant soul devouring beast. Its four elephant legs were like pillars supporting the sky, and its fat body was like a black mountain. Its two ears were like two black clouds, and its pair of tusks were like two bolts of lightning. The most special part about it was that it had two trunks. Each trunk was hundreds of meters long. One nostril emitted faint red gas, while the other nostril emitted faint white gas. Fiery water devil smoke elephant. Red gas and white gas alternated as they surged like clouds. On the back of the demonic water and fire smoke beast stood a purple-robed cultivator. Consummate sea annihilation realm. The cultivator was tall and slender, and his face was covered by a hood, completely obscuring his appearance. However, judging from the figure, it was a male cultivator. At the same time, he held a black spear in his hand. Looking at the spear, Sumo could not help but frown, because he was very familiar with the appearance of that spear. Roar! Right at this moment, the water-flame devil smoke elephant raised its trunk and roared towards the sky. Roar! The dracophant soul-devouring beast showed no signs of weakness. Sumo's body sank and landed on the back of the dracophant soul-devouring beast. "Who are you?" Sumo asked coldly. "God's messenger." The purple-robed cultivator's voice was somewhat mechanical. The laughter on the sea of bitterness should have come from him. "God's messenger? He." Sumo sneered and said, "He's just an accomplice of Tian Fu, a pawn of the corpseless sect. How could there be gods in the infinite worlds? Every cultivator is their own god." "Childish and arrogant," the purple-robed cultivator said. "Without God, how could there be the 9 underworlds? Without God, you guys would have died thousands of years ago. God created the 9 underworlds. God protected you guys. That is slavery, not protection." Sumo said, "Ants, God doesn't need you." The purple-robed cultivator gently raised the spear in his hand and pointed at Sumo and the cultivators behind him. "You guys have already started to betray God. Therefore, I will follow God's order and bury you guys in the sea of bitterness. God has already prepared everything." "Who is your God?" Sumo asked. "You guys don't need to know. Life and death are the will of God. Kill," the purple-robed cultivator replied mechanically. It seemed like he did not like to talk nonsense. Thus, he waved his spear. Roar! The water-flame devil smoke elephant's 4 hooves stomped and charged towards the dracophant soul-devouring beast. At this moment, the Dracophant soul-devouring beast did not wait for Sumo's order and directly charged towards the water flame devil smoke elephant. The battle between divine beasts was simple and clear. They directly began to fight with their physical bodies. They were all divine beasts, so who was afraid of who? Boom, bang, hua. That was the collision of two small mountains at the bottom of the sea, stirring up waves of unknown length. The shock wave created by them had already formed a tsunami once again. Within a radius of a few hundred miles, there were whirlpools of energy. At the same time, the purple-robed cultivator also attacked. Divine beasts against divine beasts, master against master. Miao Long did not attack again. She was waiting for an opportunity. The purple-robed cultivator raised the spear in his hand and directly charged towards Sumo. The spear pierced through the air with great power. Sumo also flew up from the back of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast. At the same time, the bamboo pole in his hand directly met the spear in the purple-robed cultivator's hand. Two perfected sea realm experts. This was an absolutely top-notch battle. It could be said that this was the strongest opponent that Sumo had faced in the Yizong world. Although Sumo could be sure that the other party was a puppet of this level was almost no different from a cultivator. The purple-robed cultivator was a top-notch puppet of a cultivator. In fact, at that moment, Sumo really wanted to knock off his hood and see who he was. Boom! Ka! The black spear and the broken bamboo pole collided with the airflow when they were still a few dozen feet away. The shockwave dispersed and endless waves spread. The spear and the bamboo pole had almost become the poles of a giant umbrella, an imitation of the Azura spear. At this time, Long Ji, who was watching the battle side, the reincarnators of the three realms, of course, knew whose divine weapon the Azura spear was. The real Azura spear was the divine weapon of Shang Xie, which was later passed down to Shun Yan. And that purple-robed puppet, of course, was not Shun Yan. So, he is an imitation puppet of Shang Xie. Yu Wuji said. Most likely. Longji nodded. The ghost of the three realms, Bu Miao Qian. His puppet technique is really unparalleled in the world. The black-robed Mu Qingsheng could not help but sigh softly. Those imitation puppets can almost be mistaken for the real ones. Does he want to imitate all the cultivators of the three realms? Maybe he always wants to create another world. Yi Kanshing smiled coldly on the side. To create a world that he thinks is real. Mu Qingsheng listened and nodded. That is very likely. Bu Miaotian must have endless regrets in his heart. Recreating the world might be a kind of comfort for him. Ha! Yi Kanshing sneered and did not say anything. However, his heart moved. Under Yi Sanqing's feet, black fog surged. The spiritual ink turtle had already appeared under his feet. Yi Sanqing's realm was currently only in the middle stage of the breaking realm. However, the ink turtle was a divine beast of the three realms. Its power was definitely not weaker than the three divine beasts of the Pure Land. In fact, it was stronger. It lifted its head, and the eyes of the ink turtle were full of murderous intent. It could join the battle at any time. Boom! The two divine beasts separated once again. Their skin and flesh were cracked, but their fighting spirits were high. Crack! The battle between the purple-robed cultivator and Sumo was also a draw. At this moment, the cultivators who were still standing in Nine Serenities City felt their hearts and minds shaking. The cultivators below the undead realm could not stand such a scene. If they were involved in the battle of the Extermination Sea, they would probably be torn to pieces. At this moment, if one looked down from the Bitterwell Sea, they would see a big whirlpool with a radius of 1,000 miles in the center of the sea, and the whirlpool was still expanding. Under the Bitterwheel Sea, the power of both sides kept rising. At this moment, Xiaoyu, who was standing on the top of the Tian Fu and looking down at everything, had a faint smile on her face. Shangye, you've worked hard. It's a good choice to let you guard the Bitterwheel Sea. However, Sumo, I still hope you can kill your way out of the Bitterwheel Sea. Then, I'll give you a surprise. Ha ha ha. Chapter 610. Boom! Hua! The battle intent outside Juyo City was overwhelming. The two divine beasts fought each other, neither gaining the upper hand. Sumo and the purple-robed cultivator were equally matched. However, this situation was very disadvantageous to Juyo City, because Tianfu City was always in the sky above the Pure Land. It was like a sword of Damocles hanging in the sky. If Sumo and the others couldn't get out of the sea of bitterness, the cultivators on the chaotic deity continent and the ancient Shu continent wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Even northern Chill City was in danger. Peak Sea Destruction Realm. At this moment, unless Mu Qingsheng combined with her body, no other cultivator could launch a fatal attack on the purple-robed cultivator. Sumo obviously knew this. Let's deal with the water and fire devil smoke elephant first, Sumo thought. After all, he still had many tricks up his sleeve. Then, Sumo thought. Clang! The cry of a phoenix resounded throughout the sea. Looking again, a shocking red light suddenly flew out of Sumo's storage bag. The black feather Shunhong flew out with thousands of rays of red light. The black feather Shunhong was a divine beast from another world. It didn't belong to the Pure Land. In fact, the black feather Shunhong was one of the top divine beasts in the entire Izong world. Its ultimate power far surpassed the three divine beasts of the Pure Land. However, because of Mu Jinghong, Sumo cherished it very much and didn't want to let it fight easily. As soon as the black feather Shunhong appeared, the flames were like a red sun. The surrounding seawater instantly began to evaporate and turn into fog. That kind of power was even stronger than the power of Sumo and Miaolong. The black feather Shunhong was a divine bird born to fight. In an instant, the suppression of the divine beast made the water and fire devil smoke elephant slightly stagnate. It was like a cultivator meeting an enemy of a higher level. It was natural fear. One should know that even the little white pig didn't dare to act rashly in front of the black feather Shunhong. The black feather Shunhong was a proud and noble existence. However, the water and fire devil smoke elephant instinctively flicked its long nose and directly sprayed brown venom toward the black feather Shunhong. Unfortunately, that attack was useless. Heiyu Shunhong had already grown to a height of 100 zhong, like a phoenix bathed in flames. It opened its long beak and spat out endless flames as if it wanted to boil the sea. At that moment, all the cultivators in the 9th Nether City felt the scorching heat wave. Monstrous flames engulfed everything. At that moment, it was as if a volcano was erupting in the sea. Ka. Miaolong hastily retreated. At the same time, he performed a series of hand seals and deployed an ice wall that was 1,000 feet tall and 100 feet thick. Only then did he manage to block the aftermath of the flames. Otherwise, the low-level cultivators of the Netherworld City would all die. Roar! Looking at the water-fire demonic smoke elephant's long black trunk, it was directly burnt to a crisp by black feather Shunhong's flames. That kind of injury wouldn't give a chance to recover. Roar! When the Dracophant soul-devouring beast saw that a helper had arrived, its fighting spirit naturally rose. With a flap of its wings, its fangs expanded as it charged towards the smoke elephant of water and fire. And the water and fire devil smoke elephant definitely could not fight against two at once. Puff! The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast fangs directly pierced into the left rib of the water and fire devil smoke elephant. However, the physical body of the water and fire devil smoke elephant was incomparably strong. Its other trunk suddenly curled and entangled the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast. Its trunk was like a long snake and instantly contracted. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast did its best to flap its wings, but it could not immediately escape. Its long black trunk had already pierced into its flesh. At that moment, the water and fire devil smoke elephant seemed to have the intention to perish together. Its flaming nose suddenly spewed out flames. It wanted to burn itself and the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast to death at the same time. At that moment, if not for Blackfeather Shunhong, then it would probably really perish together. However, Black Feather Shan Hong flapped its wings and directly soared into the sky. Then it suddenly dived down. Its long beak was suffused with a strange red and white light. At that moment, its long beak was like a divine weapon descending from the heavens. Puff! Its long beak was like a long spear that directly pierced into the head of the water and fire devil smoke elephant. For a moment, blood gushed out. Roar! The water and fire devil smoke elephant's four hooves kicked wildly as its wails shook the heavens. At the same time, the dragon elephant's soul-devouring beast ignored the burning flames, and its fangs suddenly emitted a black light. Umph! Roar! The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast began to devour the soul power of the water and fire devil smoke elephant. Looking again, that hundreds of feet tall water and fire devil smoke elephant began to rapidly shrink. The flames it spewed out dissipated along with it. It was like an iceberg in the sea that suddenly collapsed and gradually melted. Hua! Nine Nether City was filled with cheers. Everyone was excited. When the water and fire devil smoke elephant died, the purple-clothed cultivator's body involuntarily shook. That divine beast was his number one helper. And at this moment, the broken bamboo pole in Sumo's hand once again rushed towards him. However, that was a feint. Sumo had already used another method. The bamboo pole pierced through the air like an azure dragon. At the same time, he reached out with one hand, and a black rose appeared in his hand. Gee, that black rose hid behind the broken bamboo pole, and like a black dagger, it went straight for the purple-clothed cultivator's face. In order to avoid the broken bamboo pole, the purple-clothed cultivator could not help but lean backwards. At the same time, the azure spear in his hand swung outwards and directly knocked away the bamboo pole. However, the black rose hid behind the broken bamboo pole and arrived in an instant. As the black light attacked, the purple-clothed cultivator instinctively shook his head. His reaction should be considered fast. Everything actually happened in an instant. Whoosh! The black rose missed, but his hood had already been knocked off. The purple-clothed cultivator revealed his true appearance. It was a somewhat thin, even sickly face. That face was exactly the same as Shangxia's when he was recuperating in the Azura Demon Continent. That was a sickly young man. Shangxia? Perhaps I should not have called you Shangxia, because you are an imitation puppet. The corner of Sumo's mouth curved as she sneered. Your god is really interesting. At the same time, a kind of hostility rose in Sumo's heart, because these puppets were almost a kind of blasphemy to the cultivators of the three realms. How could these puppets be worthy of the heroes of the three realms? My name is Shangxia. The corner of the Shangxia puppet's mouth also curved. God said that the three realms no longer exist, and we're going to create a new world in Izong. Create a puppet world? Sumo sneered. Let me tell you, even if we create a new world in Izong, it can only be the three realms of the Star River. Puppets like you should all die. Ha ha ha. Hearing this, the Shangxia puppet couldn't help but laugh. The ones who die should be you abandoned by the gods. You will not be enlightened, and there is no need for you to exist. The water of the Dead Sea drowned everything. Shangxia's voice was like a divine oracle. As he spoke, he looked at the Shangxia puppet and smiled evilly. Suddenly, his expression changed, and his hands suddenly formed a seal. Bitter Wheel Seal, open. Following his shout, the Bitter Wheel Sea that had already retreated nearly 1,000 miles suddenly surged, and then lit up with endless light. Everywhere around Geo Nether City, including the Void, light appeared, and inside each light, there was actually a 7 to 8 feet long spirit talisman. The spirit talisman shone with golden light, and there were vermilion runes on it. Sea Seal Talisman. Sumo recognized those spirit talismans at a glance, because it was a type of spirit talisman in the three realms. Sea Seal Talisman could suppress the four seas. This Bitter Wheel Sea was actually an existence that had always been sealed. Chapter 611. There was a seal in the Sea of Bitterness? Or was it that the netherworld realm's sea of bitterness was sealed? Actually, it wasn't hard to understand. If there wasn't a seal, how could the netherworld form its own world in the deep sea? It seems the legend is true. Ling Hu Sheng shook his head and sighed. Our netherworld realm was formed with godly power. The head of the Li family, Li Yuntian, sneered. However, it wasn't to let us live freely, but to keep us in captivity and turn us into puppets in the future. The people of the other big families nodded in agreement, because they had paid the price of their whole families. Now, the people of the Netherworld City were the last power of the Netherworld realm. Mu Qingcheng looked at everything coldly. See sealing talisman. Of course she recognized it, and not only that, she could also break it. However, she didn't make a move. After all, the opponent was just a puppet of the Sea Destroyer rank. She believed that Sumo could deal with everything. At this time, Sumo looked at the 5 immortal talismans and couldn't help but smile coldly. It seemed that when the so-called God created everything, he had already left behind a contingency plan. If the netherworld is in chaos, the sea will be open to suppress it. Sumo didn't know that it was the God's words for back then. Whoosh, looking again, 1,000 miles away, the 5 immortal talismans instantly shattered. This meant that the sealed sea of bitterness would soon pour into the Netherworld City. The power of that would be far greater than the tide from before. The Netherworld City definitely wouldn't be able to stop the sea of bitterness from pouring in. However, Sumo wasn't afraid. Looking again, he waved his hand. A black light suddenly flew out. It was the Netherworld Een token. Everyone, please take out the Netherworld Ancient token. Sumo shouted. This sentence was naturally meant for the 5 big families and the white-robed Linghu, Huan. There were a total of 7 Netherworld Ancient tokens. They were divided into the Yin-Yang Ancient token and the 5 Elements Ancient token. The Yin-Yang Ancient token was in the hands of Sumo and the white-robed Linghu, Huan. And the 5 Elements Ancient token was in the hands of the Mo, Bai Tang, Li, and Linghu families. That was the reason why they would never be assimilated into Soul Washers. Moreover, every ancient token contained a wisp of the patriarch's soul of the clan that owned it. Therefore, its power was definitely extraordinary. It could be said that the 9 Nether Ancient token was the number 1 treasure of the 9 Nether City. It was the essence of the descendants of the 3 realms. Everyone, lend me a hand. We're going to drag Nether City out of the sea of bitterness. Sumo said as she formed a seal with her hands. He raised the 9 Serenities Een token and hung it above the Nether City. The white-clothed Linghu, Huan, and the other 5 major family clans also took out their ancient medallions. Whoosh, whoosh, buzz, buzz, above the Nether City. The 7 tokens instantly resonated. 7 beams of mystic light shot into the sky and covered the entire Nether City. Boom! Hua! At that moment, the seawater that had been unsealed began to pour down from all directions and the sky like the Milky Way. That kind of power was almost invincible. It was the power of the sea. At that moment, Xiaoyu, who was on top of the Tianfu city, saw everything and couldn't help but twitch her lips. The seal of the Wheel of Bitterness has been opened. Hee, looks like Shang Xie is using his ultimate move. Sumo, you better pray for your own good. At that moment, looking down from the void, the center of the Sea of Bitterness had formed a black whirlpool with a radius of 1,000 miles. Endless seawater was sucked into it. Even the entire void seemed like it was being sucked in by a dragon. That kind of power caused the entire Pure Land to undergo a subtle change. The chaotic gods and the ancient Shu continents were gradually moving in the direction of the Sea of Bitterness. The water level of the entire Sea of Bitterness was dropping. In the gutter, there was a faint sound reverberating. Black fog rolled, as if there was some kind of power that was ready to move. At that moment, the power that 9 Nether City was facing was increasing exponentially. The 9 Serenities' ancient tokens emitted mystic light. Within 100 miles of each token, not a single drop of seawater entered. The entire 9 Nether City was safely protected by them. At that moment, Sumo shouted again, "Rise!" At the same time, he poured his sea of destruction power into the 9 serenities token. The others who controlled the tokens did the same thing. Aside from the white-clothed Linghu Huan, the other 5 family leaders were all break-world cultivators. Boom! Rumble! At that moment, the entire 9 nether cities shook. Just now, all the 9 nether cultivators heard Sumo shout. He was going to bring 9 nether city to the sea of bitterness. Boom! Hua! At that moment, all the cultivators in the nether city felt their bodies shake. Under the effect of the 7-9 serenities ancient tokens, the entire nether city was slowly rising. Moreover, it seemed like it was not only the nether city that was rising, but the surrounding 9 netherland was also rising. It was an extremely shocking scene. Deep in the sea, a continent was slowly rising. The entire sea of bitterness was shaking. Dream on. At that moment, the voice of the Shang Xie puppet came from the void. Just now, after he had cast the spell, he had almost hidden in the sea of bitterness. Now, he had appeared again. Your power is not enough to fight against the sea of bitterness, because that is the sea of God. There is power left behind by God here. After that, the seal in the Shang Xie puppet's hand changed again. Whoosh, boom. The sea of bitterness seemed to be stimulated by some power. It surged again, bringing with it a shocking wave. Within the wave, there was a strange aura. Sumo and the others felt endless pressure. Even the resonance of the 7-9 serenities ancient tokens was broken. A bit of reincarnation power was enough to change everything. It made the entire sea of bitterness roar. At the same time, 9 Nether City, which was slowly rising, suddenly stopped. The barrier that the 9 serenities ancient token had created was under enormous pressure. At that moment, it seemed like the entire sea of bitterness was pouring down. The 9 nether barrier was changing shape. Within 1,000 miles, it had been compressed into a thin, concave shape. Reincarnation power. Sumo and the others could feel the power, but they could not do anything about it. It was a power that surpassed stages. Just like in the 3 realms, a heaven celestial cultivator could not resist an eternal realm cultivator, no matter what. Alas, Mu Qingsheng stood on top of 9 Nether City and sighed. Then, she looked at Linghu Huan beside her and smiled helplessly. It seems that you and I have to make a move. I'm afraid they can't hold on any longer. We'll have to do it sooner or later. Don't worry. Linghu Huan smiled sweetly. Mu Qingsheng nodded with a smile. Then, the two did not fuse together. Instead, they both stretched out an arm and pointed with one finger. 7-colored light shot out from their fingertips. Sizzle. The 2 rays of light didn't go after anything else. Instead, they went straight for Linghu Huan. He was Mu Qingsheng's male body. Whoosh, bang. The 2 rays of light entered his body. Linghu Huan's body suddenly emitted a strange aura. At that moment, he seemed to have become another person. Linghu Huan raised his eyebrows. Whoosh, whoosh. He waved his hand. It was pure reincarnation power. Boom, bang. The barrier of 9 Nether City instantly rebounded and erupted with unparalleled power. The entire 9 Nether City seemed to have been uprooted and rushed straight into the sea. Reincarnation level power? In the sea of bitterness, the superior evil puppet was shocked. It didn't dare to face it head-on. It turned around and rushed straight into the sea. On top of Tianfu City, Xiaoyu's expression suddenly changed. Nether City actually has a reincarnation level cultivator? Chapter 612. A rebirth realm cultivator was definitely not someone that could be trapped by the bitter samsara sea. In other words, when the so-called gods created the 9 underworlds, they never expected that a samsara realm cultivator would appear in a small pure land. Who? Hua. At this moment, the entire sea of bitterness surged with huge waves that soared into the sky. The black whirlpool with a radius of 1,000 miles began to surge upwards as if it was boiling. The whirlpool gradually disappeared. Layers of waves surged up from the depths of the sea of bitterness. They rushed up thousands of meters and then spread outwards. The entire bitter samsara sea, with this place as the center, radiated outwards. It was a fountain between heaven and earth. The power of the rebirth rank was enough to change the entire Pure Land. The chaotic God continent and the ancient Shu continent, which had been moving closer to the center, started to move further and further away. Because the bitter samsara sea stretched out 2 arms, pushing them to the left and right. Whoosh! The first to rush out from the bottom of the bitter sea was not the Nether City, but the upper evil puppet. At this moment, all the seals in the sea of bitterness had been broken by the power of samsara. The superior evil puppet was wearing a purple robe and holding a long spear upside down, standing on the bitter sea. His face was cloudy and uncertain. The current situation had far exceeded his expectations. If he had not escaped in time, the reincarnation power would have been enough to crush him. Hua! Hua! In an instant, a pitch-black continent emerged along with the upper evil puppets, and at the center of the continent was a massive city. However, the city seemed to be upside down in a spiral shape, and the lower it went, the smaller it became. It was the 9th Nether City. However, it did not completely rush out of the sea. There were still 3 layers below sea level. In other words, it hadn't completely rushed out of the surface of the netherworld. However, the part of the netherworld realm that was above the surface of the sea was enough to change the appearance of the whole Pure Land. A radius of several thousand miles. Looking down from the void, although it was not as vast as the chaotic God continent or the ancient Shu continent, it was not as vast as the other 2 continents. However, in the center of the bitter samsara sea, there seemed to be an additional black island. In the center of the island, there was a strange inverted city. Whoosh! Ah! The moment the 9th Nether City charged out of the sea of bitterness, the entire Nether City erupted in cheers that shook the heavens. Aside from those who had died, there were still several million people in the Netherworld realm. They were all descendants of the 3 realms. They hadn't seen the world outside the 9 underworlds for millions of years. To them, the surface of the Pure Land was just a distant legend. They didn't even believe it. At this moment, they knew that the legend was true. There was indeed another world above the sea of bitterness. 7 sea protectors, boundless 9 hells, cried the white-robed Linghu. His hand seals changed, and he released the last strand of samsara power he had been bestowed with. Looking again, the 7-9 nether ancient tokens instantly turned into 7 black pillars that stood in 7 different directions of the 9 nether city. They completely controlled the Nether City, and at the same time, they also controlled this part of the sea. Black light flickered on the heavenly pillar, able to last for 10,000 years, because they were the souls and beliefs of countless descendants of the 3 realms. The sea of bitterness gradually calmed down. A reincarnation cultivator, the upper evil puppet frowned when it saw the white-robed Linghu Hihuan. That was because the reincarnation level aura had completely disappeared. Master of Nether City? Rebirth State. Xiaoyu, who was at the top of the city wall of Tianfu City, frowned. Qi Wu Huwei and Xiaoyu already knew about the awakening of the 9 Nether City Lord. However, they didn't know who the Nether City Lord was, nor did they know what realm he was at. But no matter what, the rebirth state was definitely not within their expectations. Xiaoyu didn't hesitate. She reached out and crushed the jade slip that she had been holding in her hand. Once the jade slip was broken, a purple wood kite appeared and disappeared into the formation. The purple wood kite could directly lead to the Purple Demon Palace. A reincarnation-level cultivator wasn't something that Xiaoyu could resist with the power of Tianfu City. Therefore, she had to inform Qi Wu Huwei immediately. Looking at the sea of bitterness, the upper evil puppet had just calmed down. However, Sumo was already charging over on the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast. All of this happened at almost the same time. In other words, the moment the 9 Nether City left the sea, Sumo had already attacked the upper evil puppet. The upper evil puppet waved its hand, and the Azura spear pierced towards the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast. At the same time, it quickly formed a seal with both hands. A black barrier abruptly appeared in the void. Inside the barrier, thousands of spirit talismans surged, and the sound of ghosts wailing and wolves howling echoed. Gusts of cold wind blew, and it was like hell. Seeing that Tao technique, Sumo couldn't help but smile. Ridiculous. You really are a puppet, because you have no idea who I am. Can the Azura Hell technique of the three realms deal with me? The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast dodged the Azura spear with all its might. Seeing that black barrier, Sumo didn't even dodge. He suddenly jumped from the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast's back, and his body directly passed through the black barrier. In fact, the black barrier condensed many illusory techniques and killing techniques. If it was an ordinary cultivator of the sea extermination realm, it would definitely be impossible to pass through. However, they were useless against Sumo, because he was the Nether Sovereign. That was definitely something that the upper evil puppet didn't expect. Whoosh, whoosh, the bamboo pole in Sumo's hand had already pierced through the air. At the same time, he also formed a seal with his hands. Soul Trap. Two coiling black gas spiraled like dragons. The two black gas were actually faster than the broken bamboo pole. They seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Hell Technique. The upper evil puppet was slightly stunned. In the memories that it had been implanted, there seemed to be information about this type of technique. However, it didn't know how to break it. After all, it wasn't really upper evil. Whoosh, whoosh. The two black dragons directly entangled its body, and at the same time, the broken bamboo pole had already arrived. Puff! The broken bamboo pole hit the upper evil puppet right between its eyebrows. However, there was not a drop of blood, because it was just a puppet. Most importantly, it was a cultivation puppet. A cultivation puppet was also a puppet. Only a god puppet was a kind of perfection. The upper evil puppet's body was not a real cultivator's body. However, this characteristic also prevented it from dying immediately. Unfortunately, it was completely restrained by Sumo's technique. Whoosh, whoosh. Seizing the opportunity, Sumo flicked its hand again. Two black roses appeared in the air. Puff, puff. The two black roses were like two black lightning bolts, directly embedded into the position of its immortal heart and Dan C. 3 points in one line. Sumo's hand seal changed. Boom! Looking at the upper evil puppet's eyebrows, immortal heart, and Dan C. 3 places suddenly lit up and then exploded with a bang. The purple robe was like butterflies, and the broken body parts flew everywhere. The upper evil puppet directly shattered in the void of the bitter wheel sea. The puppet's ashes fell into the bitter wheel sea, gradually creating countless splashes. Xiao Yu, who was on the top of the Tian Fu city, saw everything. The corner of her mouth curved again. It seemed that Sumo was stronger than they had expected. Consummate Sea Realm. Xiao Yu sneered. Sumo, you have prepared a big gift for our miss, but I still have to give her a surprise. Saying that, Xiao Yu took out a command flag from her bosom. Whoosh, the command flag waved. The Tian Fu city descended rapidly, and at the same time, the city gates suddenly opened. Tian Fu city descended, and the heavenly gate opened. Whoosh, two red silhouettes descended from the sky. It was a man and a woman, one wearing a red robe, the other wearing a purple robe. They did not wear a hood, but showed their real faces. They were the two most powerful existences in Tian Fu city. Chapter 613. A man and a woman, one red and one purple. The male cultivator was dressed in a red robe, tall and imposing, while the female cultivator was dressed in purple. She was tall and slender, looking valiant and murderous. A lifetime advanced immortal, that was almost the pinnacle of the second stage of cultivation in the hidden world. She was only a hair's breadth away from Chi Wuhui. 2-1 era immortal realm cultivators. They stood in the air like gods. At that moment, the entire pure world seemed to be suppressed into silence. However, when they appeared, all the reincarnators of the three realms frowned. They must be puppets. It seems that the main puppets in Tianfu City are all imitations of Ziyou City. Mu Qingxiang sighed. There was third young master before, and now there are these two. Bu Miaoyan is truly amazing and unparalleled. Ha! Luckily, Xing Xingha didn't die. Otherwise, he could really imitate the three realms. Yu Wuji said from the side. We even saw the four holy envoys in the ancient coin realm. Zhan Long, Xing Fei, Jin Feng, and Lang Wu were all there. However, they must be Bu Xiyun's puppets. If we weren't awakened reincarnators with a decent cultivation base, they could definitely pass off the fake as the real deal. Yi Qianxing said. That's right. Mu Qingxing nodded. If Bu Miaoyan could create a venerable puppet, I think we wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Of course, at that level, it doesn't matter if it's real or fake. There's no difference between a puppet and a human. In any world, the strong can reign supreme. The ghost prodigy of the three realms must have become a venerable. Mu Qingxiang heaved a long sigh. Once, becoming a venerable was his life's goal. However, reincarnation was still out of his reach. The two of you can almost pass off the fake as the real thing. In the air, Sumo cupped her fists at the couple and smiled coldly. This humble one greets Ziyou's Scarlet Sun and Huanhua Fairy. The two puppets were none other than Yu, Shuaiyun Xian, and Huanhua. Sumo really didn't expect that the corpseless sect could actually imitate them. At that moment, he even wondered if he would meet his own puppet one day. Kakik, the illusionary flower puppet, looked at Sumo and smiled coldly. Don't worry, you won't have the chance to meet other so-called puppets. Huh? Sumo's expression changed. Mind reading? This illusory flower puppet could actually read minds? Could it be that she knew all the angel techniques? We are not puppets. The illusionary flower puppet raised its hand, and an immortal sword appeared in its hand. You are the puppets that cannot control your own fate. Chi, the illusory flower divine sword, shot a purple beam at Sumo. In his previous life, whether it was Xiao Luo, Murong, or the Dark Lord, none of them had truly fought against the goddess. However, the Empyrean flower was a legend of the three realms. The Heavenly Maiden was one of the souls in the heavenly coffin. Even now, Sumo did not believe that the goddess would truly die in the calamity of the Star River. Above the immortal realm, one could reincarnate. Wangju, the goddess, and the others must be somewhere in the Yizong realm. A lifetime of immortality. The illusory flower puppet's cultivation level was already above Sumo's. With the suppression of their cultivation level and the mind-reading ability, the Empyrean flower puppet almost instantly locked onto Sumo. Whoosh! At the same time, the Crimson Child puppet made its move. Its clothes were as red as blood, and its hair was as black as ink. The puppet had almost perfectly recreated the Crimson Child puppet's glory. It made a grabbing motion with one hand and charged at Sumo. The two puppets attacked Sumo together. Mu Qingxiang couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Her figure moved slightly. In an instant, her two female bodies merged into one. However, she had been hiding among the crowd of cultivators in Netherworld City, suppressing her cultivation, so she was not very conspicuous. Mu Qingxiang didn't know where Sumo's peak battle prowess was and whether she could deal with them, but she could make a move at any time. In the air, the Dracophant soul-devouring beast was already pouncing towards the crimson puppet, while the black feather Shinzong was heading straight for the illusionary flower puppet. They were Sumo's two greatest helpers. Only, against a one-era, undying cultivator, they already had the heart, but not the strength. The crimson puppet threw its head back and laughed. Then it waved its sleeves. Who? With a flash of red light, a hurricane swept the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast high into the sky. Unfortunately, the divine beast of the three dimensions was utterly unable to withstand a single blow from the crimson puppet. On the other hand, the illusionary flower puppet flicked the immortal sword in its hand and changed its direction to stab Black Feather Shenong. The Black Feather God Hong was stronger than the Dracophant beast. Its body leaned to one side, and flames spewed out of its mouth like a fire dragon. However, the illusionary flower puppet actually smiled strangely. Her body moved, and she rushed toward the raging flames. Who? At the bottom of the bitter wheel sea, the grand divine flame that could burn the three divine beasts of the Pure Land had no effect on the illusionary flower puppet. Chi, the illusory flower puppets were far faster than Great God. The mystic flower swords pierced through Great God's left wing. Clang! Black Feather Shinhong screeched and shot into the sky. As far as Sumo could remember, this was the first time Great God had been injured. Sumo's expression was as cold as ice. At the same time, he had already taken out his broken bamboo pole. However, the illusionary flower puppet seemed to know where he was going the moment he took out the bamboo pole. A purple shadow flashed, as graceful as a fairy. At that moment, if Sumo hadn't determined that she was a puppet, he would have thought that a real fairy had appeared. Her celestial beauty was not inferior in the slightest. The illusionary flower puppet dodged the broken bamboo pole. The immortal sword in its hand had already been withdrawn, and a 10-meter-long tail of light swept toward Sumo. The power of a one-era undying shattered the entire space. Fundamentally speaking, Sumo's level was not enough to contend against a puppet of this level. As soon as the pressure was released, Sumo felt his body become sluggish. However, everything happened in the blink of an eye. At this juncture of life and death, Sumo couldn't afford to hesitate for even a moment. Either the pure child puppet or the heavenly maiden puppet could kill him. Therefore, Sumo couldn't hold back any longer. Sumo's mind raced. It wouldn't matter even if the illusionary flower puppet saw through his thoughts. Whoosh! A red cloud suddenly flew out of Sumo's storage bag. The illusionary flower puppet and the pure child puppet were all attacking him. However, a new power suddenly appeared on Sumo's body, forming an insurmountable wall. Boom! Bang! As soon as the red light appeared, the entire sea of bitterness once again surged with monstrous waves. At the same time, the heavenly maiden puppet and the pure child puppet were sent flying by the tremendous force. The power of samsara. After the samsara power that had appeared at the bottom of the sea of bitterness, another samsara power appeared. However, the samsara power this time was definitely not from the white-robed Linghu Huan. A red-robed cultivator stood proudly in front of Sumo. He looked exactly the same as the pure child puppet. However, his face was ashen, without the slightest hint of blood. If he stood next to the pure child puppet, he actually looked more like an imitation puppet. Whoosh! Exclamations sounded on the sea of bitterness. This was because many cultivators didn't know what was going on. Even Mu Qingsheng, Yu Wuji, and the others were shocked. They all knew that the White Bone Continent had disappeared that day. However, they didn't know that the White Bone Continent was formed by the pure child puppet. Kill them and charge straight to the Tian Fu. Sumo shouted coldly. At this moment, Xiao Yu, who was at the top of the city wall of the Tian Fu, smiled. Resurrection puppet. Samsara level. Sumo, we will also kindly accept this big gift of yours. Xiao Yu stood at the top of the city wall of the Tian Fu and started forming hand seals. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.